Today I'm rebuilding the Colorado Rockies because I think they need it more than pretty much any other team. Right now they're on pace to be worse than the Chicago White Sox last year, and anyone who watched baseball last year knows just how bad they sucked, but somehow this Rockies team is even worse. A couple players like Brenton Doyle, Ezekiel Tovar, and Ryan McMahon are certainly not bad pieces by any means, but we have a lot of bad contracts to get rid of, and if you've watched my videos before, you know I'm going to keep this as realistic as possible. Kris Bryant has especially been a mega bust for the Rockies, as he had one good year back in 2022 and has been showing his age ever since, and at $26 million a year, I don't think anyone's gonna trade for him, meaning that we will not be able to get rid of that contract until 2028. That is already not a good start for a team that needs as much help as it can get, especially in the rotation, as German Marquez is their ace at 72 overall, but he is in a contract year and he is more than likely not gonna come back. He is their best player along with Ryan Feltner, who's also very unproven, so this team needs a lot of work, but at least they have a solid player coming up in Chase Dollander. The former first-round pick is 23 years old in Double-A, so hopefully he can get up to the majors within the next season, as there's no doubt he is the best member of a farm system that certainly leaves a lot to be desired outside of a couple prospects, including last year's first-rounder Charlie Condon. I think there are only 5 guys in our farm system that are actually worth looking out for, as Robert Kalaz comes in at number 2, who has pretty good power in right field, and I still have high expectations for our number 4 prospect, Adael Amador, who could end up being our second baseman of the future, so I guess we'll see what happens. After that, another first-round pitcher joins Chase Dollander, so while the future of this team is not as bad as it could be, it's still going to be an uphill battle. Here's our starting lineup entering season number 1, and it's not really much different than it would be in real life, as our best hitter out the gate is probably going to be Ezekiel Tovar, with Ryan McMahon as a close second. Also, definitely keep an eye on potential power hitter Michael Toglia, who's only 26 years old, and with power like that, he could be an absolute force. I won't be showing many games in season 1, but I do want to scout out the team to see what we're working with, as we're jumping into this game against Tampa Bay, where Shane McClanahan is back on the mound, going 1-2-3. One of the biggest stories of the season might be if we keep German Marquez, or if we trade him at the deadline for something else, but of course, that would require him to have a good season, as here's great contact for Kyle Farmer, going back where it is caught, just not enough power. Considering all of the bad contracts that this team has, free agency is not really an option for the rebuild, so I'm focused on building around the very few pieces in the farm. So far on opening day, neither offense can get anything going, and for Colorado's offense, that is no surprise. However, in real life, German Marquez has an ERA above 6, so I'm a little concerned for the rest of this game, as there are Rays on first and second, and Yandy Diaz slaps this up the middle to score the one from second. That is unfortunate, as it's 1-0, so now the Rockies offense needs an answer, as there's a walk for Tovar. If anyone's gonna score him, it's big Michael Toglia, but that's a huge swing and miss, and while I was hopeful, I think we should probably get used to that. All the pressure is on Marquez to have a bounce back inning, but he gives up his second run, and now he's in even more trouble with the bases loaded, as there are 2 more. We finally scored a run in the 8th, but it's too little too late, so no surprise here, Colorado loses their first game of the season 6-1. That will set the tone for season 1, as we should probably get used to that moving forward, as the Rays do indeed sweep us, and now we're facing a perennial playoff team in Philadelphia, so I'm not confident in the rest of the year. To make things even worse, we might be in the best division in baseball, with 2 teams that made the playoffs last year in the Dodgers and the Padres, along with the Diamondbacks, who are not far removed from a World Series. This terrible start is rivaling the real-life Rockies, as we have still not won a game through 2 series, and now we're facing the Athletics. A sac fly makes this a 1-run game, but there's a strikeout, and those swings and misses have probably been our biggest issue so far in the year, as this team does not hit for good contact, and the batting averages certainly show that. If we want a chance, our bullpen needs to hold it down, but if we want to complete the comeback, we have to score in this inning for a very good reason. Once the 9th inning rolls around, they are putting in Mason Miller, who is one of the best closers in the game, and I really don't want to face him, which basically makes this our last scoring chance, as Doyle does steal second. He is the tying run, as Tovar swings and misses at the low changeup, so now I'm pretty sure we're doomed, as they're putting in Mason Miller, who closes it out. The Colorado Rockies are officially 0-8, so we still have not won a game going into scouting, which may very well be the most important part of the entire season. I am looking for a good position player at the top, such as Matthew Welburn, who I do like at shortstop, but there's very little chance he would fall, and we have Ezekiel Tovar. Thankfully though, there are 3 good good infielders at the top, and chances are we're probably going to get one of them, so I may as well just scout all three, along with pitchers by region. I always scout and discover pitchers by region simultaneously, and then I individually scout position guys, which I feel gives me my best combination of prospects, and we're really going to need it for this rebuild. I've marked my needs down as starting pitcher, second base, and right field, just because there's some of our biggest weaknesses, but that may change depending on the strength of the class. At some point, it's very likely we'll have to replace Ryan McMahon, who right now is one of our best power hitters, as early on he is leading our team in home runs and RBIs. After that though, we could really use a catcher along with another corner outfielder, as I'm not sure about Jordan Beck and it's unclear when Charlie Condon will come up. After that, the other positions of need are catcher, first base, and second base, as none of our current starters are really inspiring me at all. Above all else though, I think we have to address this rotation, especially with Herman Marquez entering the final year of his deal, and only one guy currently above 70 overall. The same also goes for the bullpen, which is somehow even worse, but there always seems to be good relievers and starters late in the draft, so I'm really not too worried about this. Meanwhile, we still have not won a game as we drop to 0-10 and make that 0-11 before we finally win one against Milwaukee. It definitely was not pretty, as we only won the game by 1 run and had 4 hits all game long, but 3 dingers from some of our top players made all the difference. It took a while to get there, but we finally won our first game, which funny enough only puts us a game and a half behind the Padres, who just happened to be our next opponent. We are jumping into the first game leading by 1 run in the 8th inning, so I have no idea what happened to San Diego, but we get the chance to close them out as we sim the first 2 at bats where there's a fly out, so we now just need 1 more, and there it is. That is our second win in a row, and this one comes against a division rival. That means we are just half a game back in our division, but we lose game 2, and now we have to look at scouting, where we find out that Matthew Welburn will stay as the #1 player on our board, and he certainly deserves it. Definitely not the best hitting profile, but he has very good potential to improve, and overall is a well-rounded player that I would love to have on the squad, even with Ezekiel Tovar. The worst case scenario is one of them moves over to second base, which is certainly not bad, but now I'm scouting Charles Ray, who has great power at third base. If he's a good player, that would be a great addition to our squad, but now we have to sim the final game of the Padres series, which we also lose, keeping us at 2-13, so despite the promising start in game 1, San Diego is 2.5 games ahead of us. It's also very likely that's gonna get worse, as we're facing the Dodgers, who easily sweep us, so even though we're 2 weeks into the season, it seems that Ryan McMahon is the only player on our team that is playing remotely decent, and because he's 30 years old and not likely to be a part of our long-term future, I think I'm gonna add him to the trade block. We are not gonna be good for a long time, so it's better to get something out of McMahon while we still can, as I'm looking to flip him for either a starting pitcher or catching prospect, along with a third baseman, which would become our weakest position if we do trade away McMahon. We have the #4 overall pick, and Charles Ray is projected at #2, so he might be my #1 option, as he and McMahon have a very similar skill set, although his fielding ability is a bit concerning. Regardless, to get that type of power, I would be willing to take a flyer on that, but I'm also checking out the final blue chip position guy, but if we do want good fielding, Manuel Espinosa is definitely the way to go. Along with that, we just won our first series of the year against Washington, which definitely makes me feel more confident, as we are 5-21 nearing the end of April. Unfortunately though, Espinosa is just not the player I wanted him to be, as he drops down to rank number 19 on our board, and the offense is not looking good. That is unfortunate, but overall, this position player class is very good at the top of the board, which definitely has me excited for the draft, as we're probably getting a good player no matter what. We do need another corner outfielder though, and Nick Hagan looks like a great fit with blazing speed and elite contact, so I'm throwing him on the board and hoping that he's as good as he looks. A month into the year, I think this is the best time to sell on Ryan McMahon, and I found a great trade partner in the New York Yankees, who are coming off a World Series loss and could definitely use an upgrade. McMahon will not get us a huge return, but I feel like Spencer Jones is a good 1-for-1 swap, as he is 23 years old with plenty of power, but struggles with contact, kinda making him an unknown. Nonetheless, we are pulling the trigger, so now our lineup is even worse than before, but we have another good prospect to work with, as Jones will join our AA team, the Hartford Yard Goats, and we'll hope he turns into something. Now we need a third baseman of the future though, and there's a couple solid options at the top of the board, including Esteban Guzman, who also has very good power. Right now, I'd be very interested in drafting one of him or Charles Charles Ray, as they're very similar players, but Ray definitely has better offensive upside while Guzman has better defense. At the start of June, we are 12-46, which is even worse than the real-life Rockies, so shout out to us for that. And it seems the only player that's even playing half decent for us is Brenton Doyle, who has an 845 OPS and is 86 overall. Unlike Ryan McMahon though, I don't see us trading him, as he has 5 years left before free agency, which kinda makes it pointless. But if we do choose to move on from him later on down the road, we should be able to get a decent package for him. I just can't believe how bad this offense has been, as Ezequiel Tovar has a 605 OPS with a 221 average, and you have to go down even further than that to find Michael Toglia. Then the rotation is even worse, as we don't have anybody below an ERA of 4, and you might be wondering, why don't I just bring up Chase Dollander? And that's because he's only playing decent in AA so far, and I'm not trying to ruin his career by rushing him up to the show, especially in a season like this where we're not winning anything. The same can be said for our other prospects, which is exactly why I'm choosing to send down Adael Amador, who is just not producing. And with our 5 best prospects, along with Spencer Jones in AA, this draft class is even more important than it already was. I have scouted all the position players that I want in the first round, but now I'm moving on to potential late round gems just to see if we can find something else. After trading Ryan McMahon, I really want to draft a third baseman, and this is the class to do it, as there are 2 mid-round options that I'm very interested in. We're setting ourselves up for a very good MLB draft, but before we get there, we have the Toilet Bowl. The title for the worst team in baseball is likely down to us and the White Sox, and just for fun, I gotta see who wins this one, as Michael Toglia sends this deep in his center field, and that is gone for a 2-run home run. What a way to start out the game for Colorado, as when you're facing bad pitchers, it seems that balls hang in the air for much longer. The guy we're facing right now has an ERA above 8, and we are demolishing him, as it is 4-1, but do not count out Chicago. Our pitching is also not good, which is keeping them in this game, and no surprise here, a matchup between the 2 worst teams in the league is very close, but we just hit another home run. With 2 innings to go, I don't want to make any assumptions, but that should be good enough to win us this game, so I'm simulating to the end where sure enough we close them out. That will give the Rockies a series victory, which is very needed, as even better, we swept them to get our record to 30-60 right before the draft. I think we have plenty of options for the 4th overall pick, but my favorite target is Charles Ray just because of that power, although in the event that we do not get him, I would turn my attention to Esteban Guzman. There's also a lot of pitchers, but I don't usually like to take them in the first round since you can get such great value later on, so unless something goes terribly wrong, I'm taking one of either Charles Ray, Matthew Welburn, or Esteban Guzman. Then after that, my approach is pretty much just taking the best player available, as there are several good starting pitchers later on in the draft that I'm very excited about. The wait for Charles Ray starts now as we begin the draft, and with the number 1 overall pick, the Washington Nationals select Charles Ray. He's gone. That's it. That is kind of unfortunate, but then 2 pitchers went at 2 and 3, which means Matthew Welburn is still on the board. He is 22 years old with a guaranteed high potential and overall, and while Guzman is still on the board and is definitely intriguing, I'm also looking at third baseman later on in the draft, so it's not essential that we take one early. That being said, I'm taking the best player available, Matthew Welburn, as I feel like it would be really dumb not to take the number 1 player in the class. Let's do it. Guzman got drafted 1 selection later, so I really hope I made the right call, as we are now simulating to our 2nd selection, where a lot of our board has been cleaned out. However, fortunately for us, a good position player, Francisco Marmolejo, is still on the board, so we are starting our draft with 2 infielders in a row, which I certainly cannot complain about. I feel like that's the way to go, as the number 1 prospect on our board is still available at pick 69, and as a discovery guy, Martin Ojeda is the number 1 player in the class, and I cannot let him slip any further. Starting pitcher was one of our biggest needs coming into the draft, and while I could double up here, there are 2 players that I'm very interested in, and I don't want to miss out on my favorite third baseman, David Key, who is gonna be our selection. That gives us our 3rd infielder in 4 picks, and simming to round 4, Shannon Reed is still available, which is great news. We are taking him without a second of a doubt. Now in round 5, the number 1 player on my board is another infielder, but considering I've already drafted 3 of them, I'm gonna take a flyer on a closer because I really cannot afford to lose him. I feel like that was the smart decision, as everybody on my board is still available, and while I'm very tempted by this left fielder, he is 21 years old, so I'm going with the younger, potentially higher ceiling Valdez to close out our first draft of the video. I'm glad we are getting some fresh blood in this system because we're 27-69 at the All-Star break, and after trading Ryan McMahon, Brenton Doyle's really the only player on this team that's even half good, although Tolia, Tovar, and Estrada are starting to turn things around, so we'll see where that goes. All four of them are sitting above 30 RBIs and 10 home runs, and these starting pitching numbers are actually looking a little bit better than they were the last time I checked, which is always encouraging. Although if we scroll to the bottom, we can see that Armand Marquez is 0-14 as a starter with a 6.5 ERA. That is kind of a nightmare, so I am taking him out of the ace role and moving him down to our 5th starter just to see if he does a bit better. Then as far as our farm system goes, Chase Dollander is still number 1, although that may not last long with the new players we're adding to the system, especially because he is not putting up very good numbers in AA. He's still developing, but the consistency just isn't where we want it to be yet, so confirmed from me, he is not coming up this year, and I would not hold out hope for pretty much anybody else. Earlier in the season, I sent down Adael Amador to AA, but it doesn't look like he's playing any better than he did at 3A, which is disappointing. But at least the same cannot be said for Charlie Condon and Robert Kalaz, who are at least having decent seasons. Also, if you remember, we traded for Spencer Jones, who is now dropped to our number 13th ranked prospect, and looking at his stats in AA, I can definitely see why, as he's hitting 170 with pretty much no power. Obviously, he is still young, but so far the return is not looking good on the Ryan McMahon deal, but I feel a little bit better seeing that he's only hitting 226 for the Yankees. There's not much else to do this season, so we're taking a look at our draft picks, and honestly, I was hoping for a few more 90 potential players at the top. Matthew Welburn is at least 64 overall though, which definitely makes up for that, as he's coming in as a very well-rounded offensive and defensive player, and taking him over Guzman was probably a good move. However, if we had the opportunity, I think I would have taken Charles Ray, who's coming in with power ratings in the low 70s and contact in the low 50s. That would have been an immediate replacement for Ryan McMahon, but I still might move Welburn to third base. So regardless, I think we did well in the first round. Then in the second, we took more of a project player in Francisco Marmoleo, and honestly, he is the exact type of player I was expecting, with 89 potential and 57 overall. At 21 years old, he might never turn into anything, but that does push Adael Amador, who's really struggled so far. Not a great second round pick, but we still get another good position guy in the system, which I think is very important. But right after this selection, we addressed our rotation with Martin Ojeda, who is also coming in with high 80s potential and high 50s overall. The first thing I notice about him is his walks per 9 is 55, which will make him a good player through sim, and potentially help him develop into a good player sooner rather than later. Overall, that was a good selection, but then with our next pick, we went back to the infield with David Key. This is where we got our first 90 potential of the draft, although his overall is much lower at 52, and considering his low power and fielding ability, there's no doubt in my mind that he is a long-term project. He's also 21 years old, so not great, although we did get an 18-year-old starting pitcher in Shannon Reed, who is even better than Ojeda with a 67 walks per 9 and a 93 potential rating. These two players, alongside Chase Dollander, could be the future of our rotation, which I am stoked about, so all things considered, we struck gold in round number 4. Then our next pick was our lowest potential, but our highest overall yet, as we landed a discovery closer, Neil Sams, who could be in the bullpen as early as next year. He only has 3 pitches, and his fastball tops out around 93 miles an hour, but if he were on our team right now, he would already be one of our best arms, which is pretty exciting. This definitely was not the greatest draft in the world, but all things considered, it was very solid, especially as we closed out with our highest potential player yet in Jose Valdez. That was our 4th infielder, but I could not pass up adding another good project to our team, as in just one draft, we might have a top 5 system in all of the league. Now with the draft and most of our business in season 1 taken care of, I am simulating to the end of the year, as we finish off with a pretty miserable 54-108 record. To my surprise, the rest of our division was not as good as I thought it was going to be, as the Dodgers were the only team to finish above 500, but even with that advantage, the Rockies finished dead last in the National League and were 2 games worse than the White Sox. Initially, I was going to say that Brennan Doyle's breakout season was the biggest positive of the year, but he fell off a cliff in the second half and unfortunately put up very similar stats as he did in 2024. That is not encouraging for a team that was already really bad, as other key players like Michael Toglia and Ezekiel Tovar drastically underperformed. Tovar is especially concerning as he came into the year at 84 overall, but ended up regressing all the way down to 81. That definitely makes me nervous, as he is one of the very few players on this current roster that we really have to build around, as there is nobody like that in the rotation, as we finished with the 29th ranked ERA in baseball, only in front of Chicago. Additionally, when it came to scoring runs, our offense was dead last with under 500. Something definitely needs to change, as we're not trading either Brenton Doyle or Ezekiel Tovar just yet, but if we continue showing absolutely no promise, it might be worth starting from scratch. The Atlanta Braves won the World Series on the back of Marcell Ozuna, who was also the National League MVP with 52 bombs. He has dethroned Shohei Ohtani, who ranked number 2, while his very own teammate Spencer Strider came in at number 3 and won the Cy Young. Then in the American League, Rafael Devers won the award over Aaron Judge, and the AL Cy Young was none other than Joey Cantillo, who's a 77 overall. That is a huge shocker, especially for anyone who watched my Hawaii franchise, where he was a complete dud, and I think it just goes to show that every franchise is completely different with new possibilities. Also, on an interesting note, the team that the Braves beat in the World Series was none other than the New York Yankees, who of course now have Ryan McMahon. Overall though, he did not have a good season, so it seems we sold on him at the right time, as he put up easily his worst slash line in a very long time. Just like in real life, Bud Black will not be returning as our manager, although we were nice enough to give him the entire rest of the year, so this will be a new era for the Rockies, led by Jared Cherry. As a gaming YouTuber who spends most of my time inside, leaving the apartment is crucial for my physical and mental health. Because of this, I always try to get in my daily cardio, because showing up for myself, even on tough days, keeps me motivated, and today's sponsor, Noble, is all about that mentality. The Noble Drive is the ultimate hybrid workout shoe and is versatile for any workout. If you change up your workouts often, but want one pair of stable and reliable shoes, you can trust the Noble Drive to get the job done. They're also just so comfy, and I've been wearing them at my desk while filming this video. It's 100% Pebax foam midsole, perfectly balances stability for lifting and cushioning for cardio. As an avid runner, I'm happy to say that I have finally found the workout shoe that works for me. The Noble Drive franchise includes options in either a performance mesh or a knit upper, and soon the brand is launching its brand new Ripstop upper, which I'm giving you an early sneak peek of in this video. This shoe is awesome, feeling like you're walking on a cloud, while its perforated upper boosts lockdown support for multi-directional moves, ideal for varied workouts. Above all else, Noble fuels your training. Head to their site and use code DRIVE50 for $50 off $125 or more. This is a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click the code on the screen, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description. Going into free agency, we obviously need a lot, but the Rockies are not in position to buy, especially after last season, so pretty much none of these guys at the top are gonna be options, at least in the first couple seasons. I'm definitely interested in adding another starting pitcher though, but so far it looks like everybody is either too expensive or too old. So funny enough, it looks like our best option is to bring back Austin Gomber, who is only 32 years old with B potential, and as far as stats go, last year was actually one of the best seasons of his career. We are gonna put him on the board and see if he signs. After that, we could really use another infielder, and while Vlad Jr. has not gotten his extension from the Jays for some reason, we're definitely not in the running for him, but with Michael Toglia, I don't think we need a first baseman. Other than that, I think that second base and third base are our biggest needs, and one player that would make sense for us is Brendan Rodgers. Up until last year, he spent his entire career in Colorado, and I feel like a reunion would make some sense. However, after trading Ryan McMahon, we also need a third baseman, and I'm very intrigued by Oswaldo Cabrera, who is actually more of a utility guy. He is asking for just over $1 million a year, and still has more time to develop into a better player, and as a switch hitter, this might be a worthwhile investment, so I'm gonna throw him on the board. As I mentioned before, this free agency class will not be anything special, but of course, as the worst team in the league, we're in no position to spend. That's a good start, but once these players sign, we'll add more additions to the team, as we do lock down Oswaldo Cabrera, and there's also an outstanding offer for Austin Gomber, who is making his decision, and he will also sign with the Rockies. That will give us 2 slots to go after other free agents, and I think for our next target, I'd like to bring in another outfielder since we are losing Sam Hilliard. I could bring him back, but honestly, the power's regressing, and I'm just not that interested. And as a replacement, I think the player that makes the most sense is Brian De La Cruz. He only played in 6 games last year, but when he was on the field, he lit it up, so I'm curious what he could do as a full-time player. He definitely progressed last year, getting up to 75 overall with B potential, and this move will only cost us $1.4 million per year. We will get the news on those contracts, but first it is time for the draft lottery, and this very well might be the most important part of the offseason as we do not want to get knocked down. I really hope that doesn't backfire because obviously we need all the help we can get, and that is why I'm also interested in the Rule 5 draft where we might be able to turn another team's trash into our treasure. This is usually a great place to get a reliever, but in the first round, I'm going a different direction, taking Nicky Lopez, who is 72 overall. I know we have Estrada, but I feel like he would be a good player to have on the bench, or even potentially be a starter if Estrada does struggle as he did last year. I'm also drafting Jacob Melton for the same reason, as he's 25 years old with B potential. That means at worst, he's a replacement level starter who could develop into more, which I'm always willing to take a bet on. We conclude the offseason signing Brian De La Cruz, but it seems our division is only getting better as the Dodgers sign Kyle Tucker and the Diamondbacks sign Vlad Guerrero Jr. Definitely not what the Rockies want to see as they are in full rebuild mode, but of course the strength of our division is what will make this so challenging and rewarding when we finally do win a World Series. This is going to be another rough year for Colorado, although I'm confident the additions of Lopez, Cabrera, and De La Cruz can help at least improve the offense, as we also have Jacob Melton coming off the bench. However, the rotation might actually be worse than last year as we lose Armand Marquez, and that means our new ace is Ryan Feltner, which I'm not feeling good about. The one unit that definitely improved from last year, though, is the bullpen, as we signed Eric Swanson and Drew Smith in free agency, while also adding John Curtis in the Rule 5 draft. If there's anything we should focus on this year, it's the development of our farm system, as one of the pitchers we ended up drafting last year is already the number 12 prospect in baseball, and he is just one of 11 players that we have in the top 100. That is great improvement for the farm in just one season, and now I'm curious how much better another draft can make it. I do have to change everyone's leagues to AA, including Matthew Welburn, who was our first round pick, and I could see him coming up to the majors within the next couple years. Just because of that, I think our outlook is pretty good, as within the next 3 years, all of our bad contracts are also coming off the books, and that should also be around the time we start calling up our top prospects. At least opening day is against the Cardinals, who, if I'm remembering correctly, were also pretty bad last year. This should be a good warm-up for our brand new team as Nicky Lopez already gets on base, and that brings up Brenton Doyle, who was our best player last year, but grounds into a double play. So now I'm curious what Ryan Feltner can do on the mound as he gives up a single but gets out of the inning. So far, both teams have gotten on base, but it is still a 0-0 game, but maybe the top of our lineup can rally as Doyle gets his first base hit of the season. That will put 2 on for Michael Toglia, but once again we ground into a double play. So the inning ends without a single run, and the Cardinals are now trying to rally with the bases loaded. We will see if Ryan Feltner can get out of it, but he gives up an RBI single and a 3-run home run. We're in danger of getting blown out on opening day for the second season in a row, but here's an RBI double from Yanquiel Fernandez, who definitely underperformed as a rookie, but maybe his second season can be a bit better. I'm definitely glad we're on the board as De La Cruz drives in another run, making this a 2-run game, so finally in the 7th inning we have some momentum. However, if we're gonna come back, our bullpen needs to hold it down, which is what they do, so now the Rockies need a miracle, but that's a rough start. That means we're down to our final out as Fernandez pops us up to center field, so once again we are losers on opening day, but at least we put up more of a fight this season. On last year's opening day we got blown out, so I'm glad we at least made this one close with 7 hits as a team, but if we're getting swept by the Cardinals, I'm definitely a bit worried about the rest of the season. Now we're taking on the Guardians, and we do win a game which I was not expecting. So far our record is 1-4, but now we're taking on a Nationals team that we played pretty well against last season. They might have been the only team we swept last season, and we're leading the first game 3-2, so this is a great early chance to build some confidence as Tovar escapes a double play. That puts runners at the corners for Brenton Doyle, who slaps this into right field and drops it in for an RBI. So we now lead by 2 runs, looking for more as Toglia sends this into center field, but it's caught. For a split second, I thought that was a dinger, but we're still able to close them out, securing our second win of the season. One thing to note is it's been a very fast start to the year for new additions Nicky Lopez and Brian De La Cruz, along with Brenton Doyle, who is hitting 400. It would be great if that success could continue, as we're simulating the next game of the series, which Washington wins. So this final game will decide the series series winner as it is tied once again. However, we do have a runner in scoring position who Owen Miller is able to drive in, so we have taken a late 1-run lead, but Castillo cannot close it out. The game is tied once again. More than likely, we are heading to extra innings as we're unable to get anything going, so the end of this series is turning out to be very dramatic as Castillo gives up a 3-run nuke. That is a lot to come back from as we're down to our last out and Boyle can't get it done, so Colorado loses the series on a blown save. Definitely not what we were hoping for against a team like Washington, as we're now facing 2 playoff teams in a row, but I'm much more excited to scout players because we have the number 2 overall pick. It kinda sucks that our division rivals, the Giants, jumped us for the number 1 spot, but we should be able to land a blue chip player nonetheless, and my favorite this year is shortstop Lee Koo. I know we took a shortstop last year, but if Lee Koo is there at number 2, I think he would be too tempting to pass on, as his combination of power and athleticism make him pretty much a sure thing. I am wasting no time scouting him in the first week of the season, and then as usual, I'm gonna scout and discover international pitchers. Even if we double up at shortstop, it would be great to get as many good prospects in the building as we possibly can, especially someone like Koo, who after scouting is exactly the player we thought he'd be. However, it's unlikely that he survives past the Giants, so we do need to find a backup plan, and so far the unfortunate thing is, unlike last year, this position player class is really not deep. That may lead to us drafting a pitcher, or at least considering it, as we sweep the Cardinals after losing to them on opening day. That is great timing as we're entering a division series against Arizona, and surprisingly, we are tied up in the 8th inning. The Diamondbacks definitely underperformed last year, so as a result, they acquired Kyle Schwarber and signed Vlad Guerrero Jr. in free agency. That certainly makes them a bigger threat to get back to the playoffs, as our offense came up empty in the 8th inning, and I'm worried about Castillo, who gives up an RBI. Kyle Schwarber triples, and here's a single from Marte, so immediately after sweeping the Cardinals, we get swept right back. I can't say I'm surprised, especially as our division is once again competitive, and 2 of our best players, Ezequiel Tovar and Michael Toglia, are starting the year out on huge cold streaks. For whatever reason, Tovar can never seem to figure it out in franchise mode, but he's still 24 years old, and I really hope he turns it around because we're gonna have at least one shortstop gunning for his job. As for the rest of our offense, Owen Miller and Brenton Doyle are the only players that are off to decent starts, so this is shaping up to be another very difficult season, so even though we improved on paper, our offense seems to be on a downward trajectory. At the very least though, while it's still too early to take our starting pitching seriously, we are off to a much better start than last year with 4 ERAs below 4. Then on the scouting end of things, I found second baseman Steve Delgado, who not only fills a position of need at second base, but would be a good backup in the event we don't get Lee Koo. I'm also going to scout first baseman because this class is looking very promising so far, and with Toglia playing the way he is, we could definitely use another one in the farm system. I am starting out with the number 1 first baseman on the board because in our first draft, we addressed every single other position in the infield except for first base. This year, my only goal for the Rockies is that they improve their record from season 1, which seems pretty easy, but it actually might not happen. The reason I say that is so far, the offense is statistically worse than it was last year, as we could not tie the game against Milwaukee, who scored 3 more runs in the 9th. The combination of our underperforming offense and new look bullpen is not serving us well, and considering we finished 54 and 108 last year, and currently our record is on pace to be worse than it was last year. We're also not likely to get much better as Chase Dollander is now moved up to AAA, but he's still 72 overall and not really improving, and the rest of our prospects were just drafted and nowhere close to the majors. The only other prospect that could get a call up this year is Robert Kalaz, who is 20 years old at 69 overall, and while I do believe he has a future on this team, I want to make sure that he's ready before we call him up. So far at AAA though, he's hitting .311 with an .814 OPS, so it's fair to say that he is certainly on track for the show. Regardless, we have 10 top 100 guys, but most of them are not close to the show, but even when they do come up, we probably won't be a good team if none of our current players are able to solidify themselves as future pieces. That is why these first few seasons are so important, as we are looking for a walk-off win against the Angels, but we swing and miss. That is so unfortunate, as the winning run was on third base, and now the Angels take the lead, so we need a rally to avoid embarrassing ourselves as Brenton Doyle delivers with an RBI single. Once again, we have a tie game, but we're looking for the walk-off, and that was a very rare Michael Toglia base hit, but immediately we hit into a double double play. That is so unfortunate as we strand runners again, and here come 2 runs from the Angels, and it's fair to say that Luis Castillo has lost the right to be our closer. It feels like he gives up a run every single time he's out there, but he might have just gotten bailed out by Cabrera, who smokes this into the left center gap, and that will bounce into the stands for an automatic double. If that stayed in the yard, it would be a tie game, but fortunately, Nicky Lopez is gonna end it. Finally, that is a walk-off signature victory for the Rockies, as they were down 2, but found a way to rally back and win the game. However, in this game, Ezequiel Tovar went 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts, so I think his time as our leadoff hitter is done, although it is good to see that Michael Toglia had 2 hits, including a home run. Tovar will be taken out of the leadoff, so pretty much everybody in our lineup right now is on a cold streak, which is definitely embarrassing, as we are swapping Tovar with Brian De La Cruz, who currently has a 352 OBP. Then along with that change, we are taking Yanquiel Fernandez out of the lineup for a bit, replacing him with Jacob Meldon just to see how he does. Unfortunately, it seems that our rotation has also taken a turn for the worst, especially Austin Gomber, who we just signed back in free agency. However, right now I can't do much about that because we don't have any better options, but in the bullpen, Eric Swanson will replace Diego Castillo as our closer. Hopefully these changes can slightly improve the worst team in baseball, as we're jumping into the final game of the series, and the Rockies actually win it. That is only our 3rd series victory of the year, but our 2nd of the month, so at least for now, things are looking slightly better than they did at the start of the year. As far as scouting goes, I found a few first basemen that could be options in the 2nd round, but I'm kinda worrying about the starting pitching class, as we have not discovered anybody yet, and even though we drafted 2 starters last year, we definitely need to continue adding to the rotation. To my surprise, we are looking for our 2nd straight series victory, as we're tied up with the Astros in the 7th inning, but just like in the last game we played, we leave the go-ahead run on 3rd base. Fortunately for us though, Houston could not score, and now we get 2 guys aboard, and now it's time for Michael Toglia to step up, although that makes it a bit easier. The runners advance to 2nd and 3rd, and he smokes this through the infield to score both of them, so we now have a 2-0 lead. That is a huge deal, as our new closer Eric Swanson's trying to close him out, but after giving up a solo home run, we take him out and win the game. That is another series victory for the Rockies, who are playing their best baseball of the year, but they are still 5 games behind the Padres and are set to take on the Giants. This team has had our number, as they swept us a little over a week ago and stole the #1 pick, but we win the first game before losing the second. We could win our 3rd series in a row, but we're down by 1 run, but with the tying run on second base, we strike out. That is very unfortunate, as our offense could not cut it, but we still have 1 more chance in the bottom of the 9th. Unfortunately though, Doyle grounds out to start the inning, but there is still hope as we get Toglia on first base, but Tovar grounds into what should have been a double play. Fortunately, Tovar beats it out, but Cabrera pops up, so the Giants are the team to end our series winning streak, which honestly is on brand. At least on the positive side though, Tovar and Toglia both went deep in that game, which is a step in the right direction. And now we're facing the Marlins and the White Sox, so we have a chance to gain some more confidence. Kyle Freeland and Ryan Feltner have both been pretty good on the mound lately, so there's a chance they could be trade bait for more prospects, as we did something very similar last year, trading Ryan McMahon for Spencer Jones, who's actually having a pretty good season at AA. That is definitely something to keep in mind, especially as Chase Dollander and 2 other AAA pitchers are currently on fire. However, now it's time for another edition of the Toilet Bowl, and I'm curious how this season will go for both teams, as last year we finished 2 games under Chicago. Unfortunately, in this game, we come up empty with the bases loaded, and it's still scoreless in the 4th inning, although that might change, as here's an RBI double. Chicago strikes first, going up 1-0, but here's a single to get runners at the corners, where we once again have the chance to score, and this one barely sneaks through. Brian De La Cruz ties the game, but now we're looking for more, as a wild pitch advances both runners, so we're in prime position, but Owen Miller swings and misses. The timing on that was pretty good, but he simply missed, although Brenton Doyle makes up for it with a 2 RBI double into left center. The Rockies have taken a 3-1 lead, which might be enough to win the first game of the series, as we sim through the 8th inning and are still leading by 2 runs. Now we're looking to close it out with Eric Swanson, who gives up a run, but it doesn't matter. The Rockies hold on, as they're looking to show they're only the 2nd worst team in baseball, and another series victory would help them make their case, as there it is. They are now 21-35 near the end of May, and while Brenton Doyle is still the best player on our offense, he's only hitting .222, which is not exactly exactly good. On the bright side though, Michael Toglia continues to heat up, although it is not showing up in his stats just yet, as he still has some pretty rough numbers along with Ezekiel Tovar. Then in our rotation, Ryan Feltner and Kyle Freeland are still leading the rotation, while Eric Swanson was definitely the right choice to be our closer. Going back to scouting, we just found another third baseman who could be an option in the second round, as David Murillo is guaranteed to have good potential. The tough thing about that is, aside from first base, we pretty much have every other infield position covered in the farm, although you never know who's gonna pan out, as we drafted shortstop Matthew Welburn in the first round and then Francisco Marmoleo in the second. In the outfield though, we have players like Jacob Melton, Spencer Jones, along with Robert Kalaz and Charlie Condon, so really aside from first base and catcher, I think our farm system is pretty well balanced. The draft is also still over a month away, so we have plenty more time to scout more players. Speaking of infielders, we just discovered 4 of them, and from my experience, these players don't usually tend to be good, but we did just find the 48th ranked player in the class. This second baseman could be very draftable, but we also found the number 26 player in Diego Mesa. I'm definitely scouting him, and if he turns out to be a good player, he has the potential to transform this draft class. We also finally found an outfielder in the number 94th player in the class, Luis Negron, and he will be a primary target after not drafting an outfielder last season. At 38 and 52, I've decided to just simulate all the way to the MLB draft, and in the first week of scouting, I identified my top target as shortstop Lee Koo, but in the likely event the Giants take him first overall, I have to make a decision. Another very good player on the board is Jeff Lowry, and while I don't usually like to draft pitchers, this guy is the real deal, coming in as basically the perfect prospect for me with great potential overall and walks per 9. He is more than likely my backup option, but there's also Steve Delgado, who is the next best position guy on the board. Then with our next selection, it is very helpful that we have back-to-back selections at 38 and 39, where I'm hoping to grab one of these first basemen, along with someone like David Murillo, who I think is a sure thing. Additionally, while we did draft a good closer last year, if one of these guys fall to the second round, I might be too tempted to pass him up. The one thing I do need to say about this draft class is, unlike normal, the discovery pitchers are really not good, and we need another pitcher, but do not have a lot of late round options. Because of that, I am going back and forth on whether I should take Jeff Lowry or Lee Koo, as we did draft 4 infielders last year, and 2 of those were shortstops. Additionally, I think Lowry's combination of walks and hits per 9 make him a much better prospect than Koo, who does have good power, but ultimately his overall is being boosted up by his fielding. They're very similar prospects in the sense that they're 21-year-olds with very high potential, but our scouts believe that Lowry is the number 1 player in the class, and I have to agree. Definitely not an easy decision, but it may not matter depending on who the Giants pick, as they have the number 1 pick and are taking a starting pitcher who is not Lowry. That is very good luck for us, as for a split second, I was worried that I changed my mind for nothing, and just because of the lack of options for late round pitchers, I feel like I'm making the right decision. We had our choice at either of our top 2 players, but in the end, we are going with the starting pitcher Jeff Lowry, and now I'm curious to see where Koo is gonna go, as the Marlins go with somebody else. He finally goes to the Cardinals at number 6, and with our next pick, I definitely need to take a position player like one of these first basemen or David Murillo. Unfortunately though, my favorite first baseman goes off the board at pick number 11, so that is very bad luck as we sim forward to our next selection, and it seems we have a very tough decision to make. Considering we just drafted a second baseman last year, first baseman is the bigger position of need, and our scouts believe that Stephen Hamm is just barely the better player. Murillo's the higher potential player, but he's also a year older, which kinda balances it out, and just because of this power profile, I feel like I have no choice but to select Stephen Hamm. That is a tough move, but I hope that we have our first baseman of the future, as our infield is basically complete, although we do have back-to-back selections. With our other option on the board, that should be the easy selection, but of course, there is another alternative. There were 3 closers in the entire draft class that I really liked, and Ruben Triola is the last one remaining, and with good potential and a guaranteed walks per 9, I can guarantee that he's gonna be a good player. That is tempting as we've already drafted so many second basemen, but ultimately with a guaranteed 90+ potential on the board, I cannot pass this up. There was no chance he would be available at our next selection, so I had to pull the trigger, as closers are definitely important, but much less valuable than a second baseman. With our next selection, I am finally taking an outfielder in 22-year-old Reggie Kent, who may not be the flashiest prospect, but should come in with a high overall. The other option was either this discovery third baseman or another starting pitcher, and both are my best options for round 4 as we are simming ahead, and sure enough, they are still on the board. We could definitely use another starter, but this third baseman might be too good to pass up. However, his contact is not very good, so I might see if he's available in the next round, and for the time being, just draft based on what we need. I am taking Theodore Chung, which may or may not be a huge gamble, as we simmed around 5 and our third baseman is gone. I was definitely excited to add him to the team, but in a weak starting pitcher class, I wanted to make sure I got another good player, and now in round 5, I am taking our second outfielder of the rebuild in Luis Negron. He should definitely be a solid prospect as we simmed around 6 and both of my options are still available. I already missed out on another third baseman, so I may as well take a shortstop in Diego Mesa, who likely won't be anything special, but nonetheless ends a solid draft. That maybe wasn't my best work, but I'm still confident we added to a farm system that's already very good. As we advance to the All-Star break, where surprisingly, we are not in the worst spot ever. We are 39-58, which is not even close to the worst record in the majors. And honestly, I'm looking at the stats trying to figure out how that happened. I guess a big offensive season from Brenton Doyle might make a difference, as his OPS is over 800, and he's currently on pace for home runs and RBIs, although I did say that last year before he fell off. There is no surprise here, his ERA of 3.3 is easily the best on the team right now, as the next highest is Nicky Lopez at 1.3, and he's batting .253 with a 625 OPS. All that tells you is most of his value comes from playing good defense, as he only has 19 RBIs, and the last time I updated you, I mentioned that Michael Toglia might be heating up, but clearly that has not happened. After that, I think the only other positives are that Tyler Freeman's playing well in a limited role, while Brian De La Cruz is putting up pretty good numbers in his first year as a starter. Then in the rotation, it seems that Ryan Feltner and Kyle Freeland have cooled off considerably, but even then, I feel like the pitching rotation is slightly better than it was last year. The biggest strength of our team, though, is definitely the bullpen, as our new closer Eric Swanson is an all-star this year, while our former closer Diego Castillo is having a much better season ever since we pulled him out of that spot. Those two guys, along with our former Rule 5 pickup John Curtis, are a surprisingly strong trio that's winning us more games than last year. The one player I am so disappointed in is Ezequiel Tovar, who just gets worse every single year, and at some point it might be time to move on. However, it's not that simple, as he's under contract for the next 6 seasons, and even though he's just 24 years old and still has plenty of time to get better, Matthew Welburn is coming up fast and could overtake him as our major league shortstop sooner rather than later. Other players that could be on the way up are Robert Colaz, Charlie Condon, and Adale Amador, but I can't say the same about Chase Dollander, who is now at AAA but is not really putting up the numbers we want to see just yet. That is so frustrating, especially as he's 74 overall, and the other guys that I mentioned are much lower than that, but they are playing a lot better. That being said, I cannot anticipate any prospects coming up before the end of the season, so the rest of year 2 is really just about signing our draft picks and moving on to the offseason. There's a good chance that Eric Swanson is our only all-star unless Brenton Doyle made the game again, which he's likely going to, so even though it's very subtle, we're improving in just about every way that we can. At the start of August though, we get a little bit worse at 42-69, but honestly, all I care about at this point is viewing our draft picks. We're about to find out if taking Jeff Lowry at number 2 overall was a good decision, and at first glance, it seems like it was. Right out the gate, he is coming in with 89 potential and a 73 overall with a 69 walks per 9, so honestly, I think he's a guy that could be in the rotation by the end of next season, which we desperately need. However, the million-dollar question is how good was Lee Koo, and while he's coming in at 75 overall, I feel like we made the right decision. His potential is 2 points lower, but honestly, that's not really what I'm concerned about. Let me just say I would have been perfectly happy drafting Koo, as he has pretty much everything you look for in a shortstop, with good fielding, athleticism, and power, but the one thing he's missing is contact, and while that's gonna develop over time and he'll be a good player, I think drafting the pitcher was the right decision for our current roster, and we got a very good one in Jeff Lowry. Then with back-to-back selections, we took a first baseman and a second baseman, and they're both pretty good prospects, as Ham is likely our first baseman of the future with that great power in the low 60s, but I'm a little bit more concerned about Murillo, who might be higher potential, but he basically has no power to his game, is not a good fielder, and that contact needs a lot of work. By the way, the guy that we passed on in favor favor of drafting him is a 91 potential with 69 overall, and even though closers have less positional value, I feel like we might have missed. I'm really hoping that he develops and proves us wrong, but that is not my favorite pick, although we definitely made up for it. Reggie Kent is a very good player with 88 potential and 66 overall, which is already very good, and as you can see, he has great contact and even better athleticism. That was the first outfielder we ever drafted, and I'm glad we took him because he looks like a great player. And then in round 4, we went away from the best player available strategy, taking Theodore Chung. At 61 overall, he's a high floor starting pitcher, which we still need, but 83 potential is much lower than I was hoping for. Then to make things even worse, the player we passed on in favor of drafting him is a 93 potential right out the gate, and is likely going to be a future star for the Red Sox. That is without a doubt a draft miss. That is already 2 picks that I'm regretting, and it seems at the very bottom there's gonna be a third, but in round 5, I took a player that might have made it all worth it. Luis Negron might be a future star with 96 potential at 18 years old, and while he's gonna start in single A and has a ways to go, getting a player of this caliber this late in the draft is an absolute win. That will make up for the previous 2 misses in the draft, along with our final pick, Diego Mesa, who unfortunately ended up being a huge bust. If our season 1 draft was a solid B+, I'd give that one a B, which is still really good where we're at, and seeing the improvement from last year definitely makes me happy. We didn't improve by as much as I would have wanted, but we still won 56 games, which is 2 more than the season prior, and more importantly, that was not the worst record in baseball thanks to the Nationals. Then on top of that, the White Sox also finished with a worse record than us, so in the end, we achieved my goal of not being the worst team in the league. Looking at the stats though, this was the second season in a row that Brenton Doyle started out really good, but ultimately regressed as the season went on. Now he still finished with 24 home runs and 80 RBIs, so I don't have too much room to complain, but I feel like this season should have been a lot better. To my surprise, he was not the team leader in OPS, as Michael Toglia came out of nowhere, which we've been waiting on the entire season. After those 2 guys though, there's a pretty big fall off, as Owen Miller and Jacob Melton played well during stretches of the year, but consistency remains the biggest problem for the entire team. That was definitely the theme for new additions like Brian De La Cruz and Nicky Lopez, along with Ezekiel Tovar, who honestly is just making me sad. The offense should get better as we bring up a wave of prospects, as we finished 29th in both runs and hits, but along with that, we were also near the bottom of the league in pitching. Players like Ryan Feltner and Kyle Freeland had good starts every now and then, but just like with the offense, we could not keep the consistency going, and that made all the difference. Other than that, I think the only good note I have about this team is Eric Swanson had a good year as our closer, and definitely earned that spot for the future. We were technically a better team than we were last year, but that is still not good enough. But just a fun little note, after winning a World Series and an MVP with the Braves, Marcell Ozuna went to Tampa Bay and won another MVP. That is a crazy stat for a 79-year-old who is regressing, and I know it's been a disappointing season for Braves fans in real life, and the same thing goes for the Orioles, who won the World Series. Then of course Seattle had 2 Cy Young finalists, as I feel like they're always good in franchise, along with the Dodgers, who also had 2. This was a weird season to say the least, especially as Jacob Melton finished 2nd for Rookie of the Year. So that being said, we are advancing to the offseason. The one position we really need that we have not addressed yet is catcher, where we were easily the worst in the league last year, and while we're not going to be able to afford a guy like Jake Rogers or Carson Kelly, a player that I'm very interested in is Tom Murphy, who is 35 years old, but has much better numbers than our previous catchers. He also only wants $1.8 million a year, so I'm adding him to the board. Of course, another need for us is starting pitcher, and while Antonio Senzatella and Kyle Freeland are still eating up a lot of our money, I feel like we might be able to lowball someone like Lucas Giolito, who did not pitch a full inning last year for Seattle. That is a very reasonable lowball target that might not be on other teams' radar, and we're going to try to do the same exact thing with Miguel Andujar, who could be a slight upgrade for us in the corner outfield. These are the 3 players we're going after in the first week of free agency, but then along with those guys, I'm also interested in Blaze Alexander, who can mash lefties and maybe take a bit of stress off of Ezekiel Tovar. He is not ranked in the top 150, so we can just offer him a contract for 2 years and he will take that, but we also need a designated hitter. However, I think Juan Yepez could be the right guy for the job, as his defense at first base is not great, and on top of that, he's a pretty balanced balanced hitter, so I'm going to give him a 1-year deal. Now it's time for the lottery, but before we get there, we're signing Lucas Giolito, and the decision for Tom Murphy is also in, as we are 2 for 2. That is great news, as we have a 16.5% chance for the #1 pick, and I'm really hoping we do not go down after what happened last year. I am extremely nervous as we sim ahead and drop down 2 spots. That is a tough break for the Rockies in an offseason that otherwise was pretty productive, as we added Miguel Andujar, who in our offense will bat near the top of the order, and we also got a new DH in Juan Yepes and a new catcher in Tom Murphy. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but a once star player in Ezequiel Tovar is now batting 8th in the lineup, as he is still regressing at 25 years old. Then in the rotation, Lucas Giolito is our latest reclamation project and will be our opening day starter, as Ryan Feltner and Kyle Freeland are at 2 and 3 respectively, while another new addition, Taijuan Walker, is coming in at number 5. Then in the bullpen, it's the same as it was last year, as we actually had some success with Eric Swanson excelling as our closer. We also have 11 top 100 prospects, led by last year's 5th round pick, Luis Negron. Honestly though, I feel like 11 is a little bit low of a number, as our first 2 drafts alone have been a lot better than that, and there's still players like Chase Dollander who have not gotten their chance at the show. However, hopefully this is finally the year that he proves himself in AAA and gets the call-up, along with other prospects who are close like Robert Kalaz, Neil Sams, Matthew Welburn, and Adale Amador. If it feels like we're behind schedule for Season 3 of the rebuild, that's because I'm trying to realistically simulate a true rebuild, and for a team like Colorado, that takes a lot of time. However, there are other factors that have made this more difficult, including Ezequiel Tovar's regression and Chase Dollander's inability to reach the show. We are taking on Philadelphia on opening day with our new ace, Lucas Giolito, who gives up a home run, and that is a rough start, especially considering we just left 2 guys on base, but our new DH, Juan Yepes, reaches base on a single. He definitely got lucky with Bryson Stott bobbling it, but nonetheless, it's a good play. But just like in the first inning, we fail to score a run, Giolito loads the bases, and fortunately gets out of it. All things considered, I'm impressed he's only given up 1 run through 4 innings of play, but once again, our offense leaves him hanging as Giolito is still cooking. He has kept it close against a good team, but once again, we fail to score, and now our bullpen needs to hold it down as former Rocky Nolan Jones gives up a run. In real life, they're actually winning the Nolan Jones trade so far, but in this universe, nothing seems to go right for our team as we finally score a run in the 9th inning. We are trying our best to make this interesting as the bases are loaded with 1 away, and a sacrifice fly should score another run, so it's a 2-run game in the 9th inning, but here's a ground out to end it. Colorado loses to Philadelphia on opening day despite 7 hits from their team, and Lucas Giolito only gave up 1 run in 5 innings. That was about as brutal as it gets, but we do win the second game 7-1, along with the third one, so we might be back. Game 2 was much more balanced as Ezequiel Tovar and Tom Murphy both went yard, so now I'm curious if we can win the series simming forward and we split it. That's still pretty good. After what happened in the first game, I will definitely take it as we win the series against Minnesota, including this 7-0 victory where Tovar had another 2 hits. I know it's very early on, but just take a second to appreciate this stat line because I think it's the best we've seen from him so far, so I'm hoping that's a sign that he put in some work during the offseason. Going into scouting for the first time, the lottery screwed us over with the number 5 selection, and of course, there are 2 good position players right at the top. The number 1 prospect is a first baseman named Andy Pipp, who looks absolutely insane, but I'm also very interested in scouting Walter Jan, especially because we could use another outfielder. We are looking for another series win to start the season, this time against Pittsburgh, and we have a 1-run lead in the 9th inning. It would be nice to give Swanson some more breathing room, and with 2 on with 2 outs, Tovar can put it away, sending this one into right center field and off the wall for a 2 RBI double. That might be his biggest moment of the video, as he has struggled through the entire rebuild, and it's nice to finally see him make a play. In that game, he was 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs, so the Rocky season is off to a very good start, and now scouting Andy Pipp, there's very little chance he falls to us at number 5, but if he does, he might be the selection. I'm also taking a look at Walter Jan because we can always use another outfielder, especially in left field where we have not drafted anyone yet. It has been a good start to the year for Colorado as we are 10-9, but there's still a lot of season left to play, and now against against Seattle, Ezequiel Tovar just gave us a late lead. He is finally producing, and that makes the difference in this game against Seattle. I think one of our biggest needs in this draft class is catcher, and going down the list, there's a few guys late in the draft that could become solid projects, and the same goes for first base, which probably needs to be our target in the first round. I'm throwing Bernie Kelly on the board just to see if he's any good, and after another week of scouting international pitchers, we will move on to another region. As far as the stats go, up to this point, Ezequiel Tovar has been our best offensive player, putting up an 800 OPS, but new additions like Miguel Andujar and Juan Yepes are also playing pretty well. Speaking of new additions though, the most impressive one so far has been Lucas Giolito, who I brought in as a simple reclamation project with pretty low expectations, but so far he is playing like our ace. We have been going back and forth between winning and losing series, but if that trend continues, we should win this one against Seattle as I simulate ahead and we lose. That is a tough loss going into the third annual Toilet Bowl, and of course we are jumping into this game to see if we can win it. However, it is 0-0 in the 6th inning and now the 7th, and that is pretty surprising considering that our offense has not been that bad. However, I must be wrong if we're losing to the White Sox, but here's our chance to finally get some runs on the board as that is a fly out that puts runners at the corners. There's also only one out, so we're in a good spot as there's an RBI single from Michael Toglia. The tie has finally been broken and Freeland pitched a great game, but Chicago ties it up as Eric Swanson blew the save and we're in extra innings. However, Chicago now has the chance to walk it off, but we survive the inning and take the lead in the 12th. That was an RBI from Cabrera, and now this one is hit well, going back into left field to the wall for a home run. That gives us 3 runs as we rally back to beat the White Sox, and even though it was not pretty, we are a win away from becoming Toilet Bowl champions, and there it is. At the start of May, we are in 4th place at 15-16, and that is much better than I expected as Michael Toglia has broken out as the best player on the team. He must have heard we were looking to draft a first baseman because he is playing out of his mind with a 325 average and a 923 OPS, and while Ezequiel Tovar has cooled off a bit, he is also having a better year. Then there's also Juan Yepes and Brenton Doyle, who have been pretty good in their own right, although at this point I definitely expect more from Doyle, who is 89 overall. Our rotation got off to a pretty good start, and while Lucas Giolito is still playing very well, it seems that everybody else has taken a step back, which is not ideal. Then in the bullpen, things are looking mostly the same. However, the bullpen is sort of making up for that, while Eric Swanson's having another good year as our closer. We're still hanging right around 500, trying to figure out the type of team that we want to be, but beating a team that won the World Series 2 seasons ago would be huge for our confidence. We just tied the game in the 8th inning, so there's a great chance we're heading back to extra innings as we get a man on in the 9th. Doyle has plenty of speed at first, so we're stealing a base, which works out successfully, so we're in a very good spot as there's a wild pitch and Doyle's able to steal 3rd. That puts us in a very good position to send him home, but there are 2 away for Owen Miller, who gets a good pitch to hit and unfortunately grounds out. That is such a tough break for our squad as they now have a chance to walk it off, and they immediately do. Not a good loss for the Rockies, who had every chance to win that game, and we find ourselves further on the wrong side of 500 as we lose this series 2-3. However, on the bright side, Lucas Giolito is still playing very well, and with the way he's playing, he should be considered for the Cy Young, but it looks like he's just on the outside of it. We are now half a game out of last place, but we're taking on the Giants and immediately lose not 1, but 2 games. That means we are once again the worst team in the National League West, so after a promising start, it seems things are back to normal for Colorado. Even after making so many moves, it feels like nothing has changed for us, so at this point we're kinda banking on this first wave of prospects to turn this team around. Again though, even though Chase Dollander is 76 overall, he has not put up good numbers in the minors, and at this point that is the only thing holding him back from getting the major league call-up. On the bright side though, it does seem that our trio of AAA outfielders are all making up for it, as Robert Kalaz could very well be our first call-up of the video. Another player that could come up sooner rather than later is closing pitcher Neil Sams, who was the 5th round pick of our first draft, and at 70 overall with these numbers, I could see him coming up very soon. Hopefully we can get on the right track against the Rangers as we do win the series, thanks to another gem from Giolito and an 11-run performance from our offense. Getting swept by the Giants definitely hurts, but we make up for it by sweeping the Rangers, so even though we're in last place, we're definitely taking a step in the right direction. Lucas Giolito continues to make his case for the Cy Young, as he's only given up 1 run to the Phillies, but it looks like we're in a bit of trouble. Can we get out of it? The bases bases are loaded. We might lose this game and cost him the win, but there's a pop-up. So for the third time in the month, we are back in extra innings. I'm glad we still have a chance to win this, but our offense needs to lock in as that drops in to load the bases. That will set up a clutch situation for Brenton Doyle. The play is made at first base. A run will score if he can beat out the double play, which he does. Thankfully, he was the guy running to first rather than big Michael Toglia or something, as Eric Swanson's in the game to close it out and does exactly that. That will give us a series victory against a pretty good Philadelphia team, so it feels like everything is finally turning around for the best as we also win a series against Washington. At the start of June, we are back to 500, now in 4th place in the division, and this would not be possible without the amazing play of Michael Toglia, who very well might become an all-star, as he was on fire for that entire month and is starting to really improve. He's also under contract for the next 4 seasons, so I think I made the right move extending him, as you can make a strong argument that he's been the league's best first baseman. It has been a great season for him, along with our DH Juan Yepes, who's having a good season in his own right, leading the team in hits, as Ezequiel Tovar also continues to get back to where he was before. As far as the rest of the offense though, I feel like there's room for improvement, as Brenton Doyle's been pretty good, but aside from those first 4 guys, I feel like everybody else is underproducing. At least we have Lucas Giolito on the mound, who is basically our only good starting pitcher, although to my surprise, Chase Dollander is on a hot streak and might be getting a call-up sooner rather than later. Ever since I called him out, he has been on a tear and is now our highest overall starting pitcher, and honestly, with the way the rest of our rotation is playing, it might be time to call him up. This has been a long time coming, but Chase Dollander is finally at the major league level, but even though he is 77 overall, I think I'm going to start him off as our 5 starter and see how he does. However, along with calling up Dollander, I'm also making another move, bringing up Robert Kalaz. As our farm continues to grow and mature, there should be some other players on the way up to the show, such as former first rounder Jeff Lowry, along with other players I've mentioned like Matthew Welburn, Robert Kalaz, and Neil Sams. There's also Adael Amador, who is now at AAA and is putting up amazing numbers, so he is another candidate to be a June call-up. And the same goes for Charlie Condon, who may be our 13th ranked prospect, but don't forget that this guy was a high first round pick in 2024. Unfortunately though, Chase Dollander's first start will be against the Dodgers, and because this is an important moment of the rebuild, I feel like we have to jump into this. So far, he's holding up pretty well for himself, only giving up 1 hit and 2 walks through 4 innings, but as you would expect, our offense is not doing him any favors. It is still scoreless in the 7th inning, but Ohtani goes deep off of him, and from there, the Dodgers would score 2 more runs. Despite a solid debut from our rookie, Roki Sasaki shuts us out, so we are now losing the series 1-2, simulating the final game, which is tied in the 7th inning. I'm gonna sim the rest of it as we do lose 11-6, and that means we are back under 500 going into this series against the Cubs. However, we just won the 2nd game of the series 18-3 thanks to 2 homers from Michael Toglia, and that actually moves us up to 3rd place. We've been shockingly competitive this year despite honestly only having 4 good offensive players, as everybody else seems to be a replacement level starter, and aside from Lucas Giolito and now maybe Chase Dollander, the rest of our rotation is really bad. That being said, I think it's finally time we add some more firepower to this offense, as guys like Adael Amador, Charlie Condon, and even Jacob Melton are raking at AAA. In a shocking move, we will be calling up not just these 3 guys, but also Matthew Welburn and Robert Kalaz all at the same time. To make this work though, we have to DFA several players like Nicky Lopez and send down guys like Oswaldo Cabrera. I also traded Owen Miller and Brian De La Cruz to the Astros for a center fielder because they really needed upgrades at both positions. Here's our new look lineup after making several call-ups with Robert Kalaz, Matthew Welburn, Jacob Melton, and Adael Amador joining the squad to hopefully improve our offense. And while I thought I was going to call up 5 players, there really wasn't room for Charlie Condon, so he's going to stay in AAA a bit longer. The future of the organization could very well be here, so I obviously have to jump into the first game with our new lineup, as we're debuting 4 new players all at the same time. Add in the fact that Toglia and Tovar are back, and the future is very exciting, as there are 2 on for Adael Amador, who scores the game's first run. Not only did he score, but that one went 115 miles an hour off the bat, so all things considered, the future is looking bright, but Vlad Guerrero Jr. ties it right back up. Very fittingly, this one's going to extras as Jacob Melton just decapitated their pitcher. He is gone. I have no idea how he stayed in the game, as that went right off of his jaw, and Jacob Melton secures his 2nd hit of of the game. We suddenly have a chance to walk this off as the bases are loaded for Juan Yepez, who hits this one back up the middle to win it for Colorado. The new lineup made all the difference in a signature win for the Rockies as we took down one of our toughest division rivals. That would give us another series win after sweeping the Cubs, but now we're up against the 4th place Padres with Chase Dollander on the mound. It's gonna be a close one. We simulate it and lose by 1. Every time it feels like we're taking a step forward, we just can't do it, as Colorado is still struggling to find consistency, although they win 3 games against Arizona. I think our rotation is the biggest reason that we've been inconsistent, as Kyle Freeland and Taijuan Walker just aren't it, but the good news is our 2 worst pitchers are in the last year of their deal, which definitely helps. However, with Taijuan Walker only making $1.2 million, I'm gonna designate him for assignment because there is one player who cannot be held at AAA any longer, and that is last year's first-round pick, Jeff Lowry. He's putting up amazing numbers in AAA and is definitely pro-ready, so I am calling him up to stabilize our rotation. At least on paper, that move makes us a better team, as Lowry wins his first start against the Mets 6-1, and in this game, our first draft pick of the video, Matthew Welburn, had 3 hits and a home run. We would sweep that series and end off the month on a great note, moving up to 2nd place at 47-39. It is great to see that our new lineup is making an impact, even if these numbers don't look amazing so far, as 3 of our players have not been very impressive, but the same cannot be said for Adael Amador. He might be our most improved player this season, as he's breaking out with a 308 average and an 832 OPS, and all I can hope is Melton, Welburn, and Colaz get better with time. Before I forget, every player that I draft and bring up in this video will be renamed after one of my channel members, so Matthew Welburn now becomes Aiden O'Connell, and our new pitcher Jeff Lowry will be called Flamingo Alvarez. From here, we're simulating all the way to the MLB draft, where we have the number 5 pick, but there are plenty of good players on the board, so I think we can get a solid prospect. My favorite players on the board, though, are Andy Pipp and Walter Yon, although they're probably not going to be there when we select, as they're easily the best position guys on the board and should go pretty early. That being said, I'm just going to take the best player available at number 5 and hope for the best. Just like in last draft, I feel like this pitcher class is not very deep, so I would have no problem taking one at number 5, as there goes Walter Yon right away. However, with the 2nd pick, one of my favorite selections goes off the board. As the Cardinals reach for a pitcher, there's one selection between us and Andy Pipp, and for some reason, he is still on the board. For some reason in MLB The Show, the consensus number 1 overall pick seems to fall more often than not, and I truly have no explanation for it, but I'm not complaining. We just got the best pure hitter in the class at number 5, and now for the rest of the draft, we're gonna take the best player available. Getting Pipp alone makes us a solid class, but we're also finally drafting a catcher, and on top of that, we're taking another project in the outfielder and switch hitting center fielder Ryan Lowe. With our final selection, there's a discovery closer still on the board in Ross Schultz, and if he's anywhere close to his max potential, we might have gotten the steal of the draft. At the All-Star break, we are somehow only 2.5 games behind the Dodgers, which is truly a miracle, and we would not be in this position without Michael Toglia and Ezequiel Tovar. Other players like Juan Yepez have also made an impact in their first year, but the fact that 2 guys from the original Rockies core have turned things around is a huge win. However, we also brought in a lot of new players who could make the second half of the season even better, as Adael Amador is playing like one of the best second basemen in the league already, and while Robert Colaz is off to a bit of a slow start, it seems he is finally heating up with 2 home runs in his last 3 games. It seems the other reason we're winning right now is our rotation, as Lucas Giolito is an all-star and has proved to be a fantastic reclamation project, improving all of his stats even at 32 years old. I'm also very excited about recent call-ups like Chase Dollander and Flamingo Alvarez, who so far have played pretty good baseball. In the first 2 years of the franchise, we only had 1 all-star a year, but I'm expecting that to be different, as of course Lucas Giolito makes the game, along with Eric Swanson, who is the starter at closer. Michael Toglia is the final guy I'm expecting to make it, but it seems he got snubbed as Pete Alonso and Vlad Jr. made the game, despite putting up significantly worse seasons than Toglia. That is very unfortunate, and now I'm not sure if we're gonna have anyone else, although Brenton Doyle is here, so that gives us 3 all-stars, which I have to say is pretty good. Colorado has been one of baseball's best stories for multiple reasons, and a strong second half could help them steal the division from LA. Robert Colaz just gave them the lead against the Nats, and all-star closer Eric Swanson closes them out. That victory helps them win their 2nd series out of the break, as in the previous victory, Mike Michael Toglia had 5 hits and 4 home runs. He is currently in second place, only behind Ohtani for home runs, and as a result, he has played himself into all-star conversation. I'm very interested if he can sustain this success, but on a completely different note, I am making a move trading Drew Smith to the Red Sox, and that will get us a 50 overall 20-year-old, but the bigger story here is we can now upgrade our bullpen, bringing up Neil Sams. He has had a great year at AAA, so why not bring him up to the show now, as he joins the growing wave of prospects to get the early call-up. Hopefully that's enough to catch the Dodgers, but we might need to make one more move at the deadline, as we're currently relying on hot streaks from several players to help us catch up to them. Brenton Doyle keeps us fair into right field for the go-ahead double against Milwaukee. That rally will get us another win, as we are so close to catching LA, as we are tied with them at the end of July, which I never saw coming. It is also the trade deadline and the final chance to add to our team for the rest of the year, and as you know, we have plenty of ammo in the farm to make something happen. I think the one position we could really use an upgrade is still catcher, as Tom Murphy and Brian Navarreto have not been very good at all, but I'm not sure if there's gonna be one on the trade block. I'm looking, and there is Pedro Pages. This may not be the biggest splash in the world, as he's having a bit of a down season, but I still feel like we need to make the trade, as he would be far better than anybody else. The other great thing about this move is it is not going to cost us very much at all, as I'm throwing in a 72 overall pitcher, which will be enough for the 1-for-1 swap. That is the only addition we're making at the deadline, but I feel like it's going to make a huge difference, especially considering that our offense will only keep improving with Adael Amador and Robert Calaz both looking like superstars. It is very unlikely we don't make the playoffs, but we have 2 months to try and win the division, and we're starting August in a close one against the Padres, but Brenton Doyle drops in the go-ahead RBI. That was so close to not getting down, but fortunately it did, as Swanson's in the game to try and close it out, which he does. That will officially put us 1 game over the Dodgers, as we've won 8 out of our last 10, and it seems everything is coming together for Colorado. However, now they're looking for revenge, as we're taking them on just a week later in a series that could ultimately decide the entire division, and as you would expect, they are absolutely loaded from top to bottom. We've been on fire, but I'm afraid it is no match for the Dodgers' pure talent, as we lose 2 out of 3, and if that wasn't bad enough, we are taking them on again just a week later. We can't afford to lose our 3rd series in a row, so it's time to lock in, as Robert Calaz ties us up 1-1, and we just need our bullpen to hold on a little bit longer. It's the 7th inning, where we have 2 aboard, but Brenton Doyle pops up, so we might be cooked, as we give up 3 runs in the 8th inning. Unfortunately, we lose game 2, so the next 2 games are very important, as we sim both of them and lose another series. After a very good July, we have been struggling, as we're losing way more series than we're winning, and as a result, we are 3 games back in the division entering September. Unfortunately, the addition of Pedro Pages is not making a difference, as he might actually be playing worse than our catchers were before. Michael Toglia may be one of the only reasons we're still alive right now, as he is already over 100 RBIs and is approaching 40 home runs, as he remains in second place for the MVP. However, the additions of Adael Amador and Robert Calaz specifically have made a huge impact, as they are both over 800 OPS, and on the pitching side of things, Lucas Giolito is still a legitimate Cy Young contender, while Chase Dollander and Flamingo Alvarez have been good options behind him. We are in first place for the NL wildcard by a huge margin, but of course that is not what I'm going for, as the Dodgers are not sitting far in front of us, so I'm looking to overtake them. We are off to a great start to September, but unfortunately so are the Dodgers, as we're still 3 games behind, and now we're trailing by 1 run to the Giants. Unfortunately, that turned into a loss, so we have fallen even further behind the Dodgers, although we do win the next game along with the next one. That at least helps us stay 2.5 games in second place, and there's still 1 more game of this series left to play, and it's very close, but we do win it. That will give us our 3rd series victory of the month, as we win another one against Atlanta before losing to Kansas City, but with 6 games to go, we are still 3 games back, so it's not looking like we're gonna win the division. We simulate to the end of the season, where we finished 95 and 67, but the Dodgers ended off with a 10-game win streak, so we were not catching them no matter what. I would call this season a great success for Colorado, as even though Shohei Ohtani won the MVP, Michael Toglia finished in 3rd place. Then, along with that, Lucas Giolito, who we brought in last offseason, finished 3rd for the Cy Young, and considering he's only making $8 million a season, he might be one of the best values in the league right now. Finding an ace was the most important step for this team, especially considering that they play in playing Coors Field, but their luck with good pitching continues with Eric Swanson, who won Reliever of the Year with 56 saves. That was the second most in MLB, just behind Cade Smith, so he is another guy who has revived his career with Colorado. Another big signing for us, though, was Juan Yepez, who finished with 96 RBIs, which was second best on the team, along with his home run total of 24. He also had a 785 OPS, which is pretty solid, as aside from Michael Toglia, the only regulars that were higher than him were Adael Amador and Robert Calaz, who both played half a season. We also got a bounce-back year from Ezekiel Tovar, while Brenton Doyle put up similar numbers as he did the past 2 seasons. I already mentioned Lucas Giolito, who carried the rotation, but we also called up Flamingo Alvarez and Chase Dollander in June, who definitely pulled their weight. They both improved considerably, and considering that neither one of them used up a year of service time, the future is definitely bright in Colorado. Then after those 3 guys, Ryan Feltner and Kyle Freeland were not great, but getting a positive WAR season from both players is a huge deal. But honestly, these numbers are perfectly fine with me, as they put up positive WARs, which is all I could ask for. It also helps that our bullpen was really good, as John Curtis had another great year, and then of course Eric Swanson won Reliever of the Year, while Neil Sams was pretty good for a rookie. It is time for the playoffs, where we are taking on Paul Skeens and the Pirates, and while I am worried about their rotation of Skeens, Jared Jones, and Mitch Keller, I feel like this is not a bad team to play for our first playoff series of the rebuild. The tough thing for the Rockies, however, is half their lineup is on a cold streak, and facing off against Paul Skeens, that could be a disaster. If we want a chance to win this, Giolito needs to lock in, while the offense needs to do just enough as we get 2 guys on, but we hit into a double play. That may not fare well for us, as they score the first run of the game, and against Paul Skeens, that might make all the difference. There are runners at the corners with 2 outs, and now the bases are loaded, so our new catcher needs to step up, but he grounds it straight to first base. Despite a decent start from Giolito, we might be getting shut out, as there's 3 runs, followed by a grand slam. Every good part of our team completely vanished in this game, as our offense and our bullpen sucked. That means that our season is in jeopardy with Chase Dollander on the mound, who gives up a run immediately, and I'm not feeling confident, but there's a run before the Pirates come back to score 3 more in the 3rd inning. Things are not looking good for Colorado, as they give up another one, and while this has been a great season, they ended the year on a cold streak and are unable to rally in the playoffs. This is our last chance, and the season is over. Colorado gets swept in 2 games in the wild card. Definitely not the result we wanted to see in the playoffs, but we're still a young team, and I think we're just getting started. No surprise here, the Dodgers won the World Series over the Twins, and they're definitely the team for us to beat, especially considering that they're in our division. Unfortunately, we also have several free agents, but the only one I'm looking to bring back is Eric Swanson, who may be regressing at 34 years old, but I need to see what he wants, and $7.8 million is not gonna happen. I think the best I can do is give him about $6 million for 1 year. There's pretty much no chance he accepts that, and after the season he just had, I would be very surprised if he accepted that. Along with moving on from those players, though, we're also dealing Ryan Feltner and Tyler Freeman, who have been okay, but they're starting to get a little too expensive for us, and the Astros could use help at both positions. As far as free agency goes, we definitely need to bring in another starting pitcher, because while we do have players like Brody Brecht, Carson Valmquist, and Jaden Hill, these walks per 9 ratings may not be in a good enough spot, so I am a bit interested in bringing back Kyle Freeland. It definitely wouldn't be perfect, but at 34 years old, I think we can lowball him, and the numbers that he put up last year were more than fine for a 5-starter. Additionally, the starting pitcher market is just not that good, as someone like Mackenzie Gore would cost us over $20 million a year, and going down the list, I'm not seeing many budget options. I'm also interested in bringing in James Karinchak, because we're probably not getting Eric Swanson back, and this is a guy I feel like could be a good closer. However, I feel like Neil Sams is also ready to compete for that role, along with Ross Schultz, who we just drafted in the 6th round. This also reminded me that I did not show the ratings from the draft class last year, which might be the first time in channel history that I forgot to do that. At number 5 overall, we took Andy Pipp, who is coming in at 79 overall right out the gate, so he is a very high floor player with 89 potential that we can plug in sooner rather than later. It's gonna be interesting to see what we do at first base, as Michael Toglia still has 3 years left on his deal, and considering that Juan Yepez has also played well, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with Pipp. In this draft class, we signed 4 guys who have 90 potential or greater, with center fielder Ryan Lowe and catcher Andrew Bryan being intriguing project players, while someone like Ross Schultz is a little more pro-ready, with Pablo Cabrera Cabrera being right in the middle. That will officially give us 12 players with A potential or greater, as we have completely overhauled this farm system in just 3 drafts, as the list of B potential guys is about double the size. I'm also going after Andre Palante, who doesn't want a lot of money and could very well be this year's Lucas Giolito. The Dodgers have offered us a trade. It looks like they want Jordan Beck. I'm definitely declining this since it's the Dodgers, but I think it's important to keep in mind that we should consider trading Jordan Beck since Robert Kalaz and Charlie Condon are in front of him. Just imagine if we got this 20-year-old reliever from the Red Sox. I think that would complete our bullpen, and considering they have not one but 2 young closers with potential, I don't think they would really miss him. We're gonna throw in Jordan Beck and see if this gets us close. It's not quite there, but maybe if we offer Zach Veen instead, that'll apparently get the deal done. They're the same age, but Zach Veen is 3 overall less, and apparently that makes all the difference, and he will be traded to the Red Sox for Leo Ramirez. He is gonna plug straight into our bullpen, but one thing I didn't even think of is that his stamina is 67. With a 37 pitch clutch, he may never be a high leverage reliever, but his 91 walks per 9 make him a great long reliever or even a back end starter. If that's the case, this could go down as the most lopsided trade in Major League history, as looking at the stats that actually matter, Ramirez might be the best pitcher we have. That being said, I am no longer that interested in Andre Palante, but I will go ahead and offer a 2-year deal to James Karinchak. That concludes the offseason, and we are 1 year away from getting this disgusting Chris Bryant contract off the books, and if that didn't exist, our payroll would be just above $80 million. The biggest thing that's going to make or break this season is consistency, and what I mean by that is Michael Toglia is not going to probably put up another MVP level season. It was certainly great to get 41 home runs and 113 RBIs out of him last year, but it's just not sustainable at 82 overall. So in order to improve on last year, we need players like Robert Kalaz, Adale Amador, and Aiden McConnell to step up. As long as those guys improve and the top 3 players from our lineup don't regress, we should be in pretty good position to compete for the NL West. Lucas Giolito in the rotation is another area that we definitely need some more consistency, because I feel like Giolito's season last year was a bit of a fluke, as he finished in 3rd place for the Cy Young after pitching less than an inning the year before. We're also getting a full season of Chase Dollander and Flamingo Alvarez, which should in theory help the team, but the wild card player I'm very excited about is Leo Ramirez, who I already talked about because of his 91 walks per 9. He could very well be the breakout player of this entire team at just 20 years old, but then in the bullpen, the most notable change is moving on from Eric Swanson and replacing him with Neil Sams. This offseason, we also traded catcher Drew Romo for 3rd baseman Grant Groves, who is now the top prospect in our organization and is one of 13 guys that we have in the top 100. However, of those 13 players, 2 guys at the bottom have the best chance to come up to the show, as Charlie Condon and Tyrone Liranzo should both be ready. Additionally, do not count out Andy Pipp and Ross Schultz, even though they were just drafted last year. Very fittingly, we are starting the year with a playoff rematch, and I'm hoping for a better result on opening day. Once again, it is Lucas Giolito against Paul Skeens, and we're still scoreless in the 7th inning. This game will simply not end, as it's gonna come down to the bullpens, as we are in the 9th inning looking to score the first run. Unfortunately though, we cannot deliver, and now the Pirates win it, so just like in the playoffs, they get the best of us. Not a good offensive showing for the Rockies, who had just 4 hits all game. If we want any chance to make the playoffs, let alone win the division, we have to be better, and while those first couple games had me nervous, it looks like we're able to rally back, even winning a series against the Pirates. Near the end of April, we are in 2nd place, above the Dodgers, but below Arizona, and while I've been fully focused on the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks might also be a threat with Vlad Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez. So far, this offense has been pretty interesting, as Michael Toglia has certainly taken time to heat up, and these numbers are much closer to what we saw from his previous seasons. And actually, at the rate he's going, this would be the worst season of his career. I said that consistency would ultimately determine how good of a team we are, and so far, Toglia and Juan Yepes are having slow starts. However, I think the rest of our offense more than makes up for it, as the first draft pick of this rebuild, Aiden O'Connell, is having a breakout year at 3rd base. It is a very limited sample size, but he's hitting .325 with pretty good power, as he's tied for 2nd on the team in home runs, and is also tied for 2nd in RBIs right behind Brenton Doyle. He is now 90 overall and having a pretty good season himself with an .849 OPS, success, and I'd be interested to see if he can sustain this through the entire season. Then checking out the rotation, it looks like the numbers have been good enough, as so far all of the ERAs are under 4, including Leo Ramirez, who is a relief pitcher, but it seems that making him a starter was the right decision. With the team playing pretty well, we are simulating to the end of April just to see what our record is, and even though we're still in second place, 21-14 is pretty good. Depending on how we perform throughout the year, this might just be a year that we simulate, and the reason I'm saying that is one of our key pieces, Lucas Giolito, is entering the final year of his deal, and it remains to be seen if the young guys on this roster are ready to carry the torch. However, another year of development for guys like Robert Calaz and Adael Amador could prove to be very beneficial, allowing us to potentially compete in 2029. The only issue with this plan is Brenton Doyle's contract is up, but with players like Charlie Condon and even Luis Negron waiting in the wings, we should be able to replace him. However, if we do not win the championship in 2029, I feel pretty confident about the rest of our prospects developing and getting us there eventually. That is the game plan, but of course it's easier said than done, especially because we're taking on the Dodgers, who are currently in third place, but won 105 games last year. This is no doubt a very important series as we lose the first game, but win the second. It all comes down to game 3, and we could really use this win. We are tied in the 9th inning, but the Dodgers are going to score the first run, followed by the second. That is very bad luck for us, as they shut us out, and our bullpen completely blew it. Just like last year, it seems we cannot compete with them, as we also lose to Texas, and officially fall into third place in the NL West. Now that we've made the playoffs, it's kind of hard to call this series against the White Sox the toilet bowl, but we might actually lose. That would be embarrassing, so we need to turn things around, and there is an Oswaldo Cabrera no doubt home run to give us the lead. It really feels like we needed that, as we are simulating the 9th inning and get the W, securing another toilet bowl victory. We were so close to losing that, but we go on to sweep the White Sox, and at the end of May, we are still in a pretty similar spot, which I'm honestly okay with, because I feel like there's a lot of room for the team to heat up. Several key players like Chase Dollander and Michael Toglia are currently on cold streaks, and if they can find a way to get out of them, we could see our wins surge just like Arizona. Speaking of the Diamondbacks, they happen to be our next opponent, and someone needs to put them in their place, as we are down 1 run, but Michael Toglia just ties it up. This game could very well be heading to extra innings as long as our bullpen does not let us down, and they don't, so we are going to the 10th inning looking for the win. We can walk it off against the first place team, but with the winning run on second base, Big Mike needs to deliver, but he is unable to. That means we are going to the 11th inning where Neil Sams is trying not to give up the lead as he loads the bases but gets out of it. That was not pretty, but we are still alive, putting runners at the corners in the 11th, and now all we need is a sacrifice fly, but Adael Amador can do a little bit better than that. We have walked off game 1 against Arizona, which now puts us 3 games out of first place as we win the second game, lose the third, and win the fourth. That's a huge deal. That means we are just 2 games away from first place, and we are sitting alone at the top of the National League wild card with the Dodgers. Last year, Michael Toglia was a huge year for our success, putting up better offensive numbers than anybody else by far, and this year it seems that is Brenton Doyle. He is on track for another All-Star season, with this one looking like his career high, which is a big deal for the 29-year-old who has 1 year left on his contract after this. Another All-Star appearance would definitely set him up for a huge payday, and while Michael Toglia is definitely starting to heat up, the rest of our offense has been overwhelming to say the least. Players like Amador and O'Connell have definitely been okay, but key players from last year like Juan Yepes and Blaze Alexander have kind of fallen off a cliff. That is making it so difficult to gauge this team's success, but at least our rotation is on fire, as Flamingo Alvarez and, to my surprise, Kyle Freeland have been our best starters. Even with the success though, we are just slightly better than 500, going back and forth, and while the rest of our division has not been much better, we definitely need to figure it out. I think for now the best thing we can do is simulate the rest of the month and hope we see some improvement, as we do win 4 games in a row, but now we're in a 4-game series against the Dodgers where we split the first 2 games and lose the final 2. At the start of July, LA has taken over the division, winning 9 out of their last 10, and to my surprise, if the season ended right now, we would not even be in the playoffs. I don't really know why we've been struggling, but we need a fast solution, and what better change is there than accelerating a prospect up to the show? Andy Pipp has been unstoppable in AAA, and we cannot keep him down there any longer. He is already coming up to Colorado, and I don't know who I'm sending down, but I'm not really worried about that right now. I just want to get a good player in the building. The lineup with Pip will look something like this, as Michael Toglia is actually going to slide into left field, where he's surprisingly fast, and of course we are starting Pip at number 7 in the lineup for his power hitting ability. Additionally, I can see that Diego Castillo is starting to regress at 34 years old, which is definitely a bummer, as he had some good years in Colorado, but it seems those are behind him. He is hitting free agency after this year, so I'm just gonna DFA him, and we are bringing up Ross Schultz, who was drafted in the 6th round last year. I really hope that Neil Sams can save a season where Brenton Doyle is our only all-star, because just like Toglia, if we removed his numbers from the lineup, we would be in absolute shambles. Big Mike himself only has a 695 OPS and is entering the break on a cold streak, while Ezekiel Tovar has been average at best, and we're not really seeing the improvement from our young guys that I was hoping for. This is especially true for Robert Kalaz, who down the stretch last year was no doubt one of our best hitters, but has fallen off a cliff in his first full season. We definitely need to figure this out so we can push to the playoffs in the second half, but on the bright side, it seems that the Andy Pip experiment is working so far. At 56 and 41, we are simulating to the trade deadline just to see where we're sitting. After simming, we are in surprisingly good shape, winning 8 out of our last 10 games, and while it seems we're headed in the right direction, I'm going to solidify things even more, making this trade for Garrett Whitlock. That will give us a good long reliever at the top of our bullpen, which we've desperately needed all season long. All of these moves have paid off, as I'm simulating the entire month of August, where we have a lot to lose, and it doesn't look like we're winning many more games than before, as we are 16.5 games under the Dodgers, which is not exactly what I had in mind. Obviously, LA is built different, but with a huge deficit like that, we're lucky to even be in the second wildcard spot, as Brenton Doyle has really cooled off in the second half of the season, which is affecting the rest of our offense. However, it seems this is already Andy Pip's team, as he's having a great start to his career, as he is up to 84 overall and A potential in his first season. I don't think this has been a bad season, but more than anything, it proves that season number 3 was a massive fluke, as we probably never should have made the playoff. With 6 games to go, we are 12 games out of first place at 88 and 68, and any chance of beating last year's record is officially gone. However, we are almost definitely getting a wild card spot, as we just need a couple more wins, and that is not a good start. We just lost 3 games in a row to Cincinnati, as we lose the next 2 against San Diego, but fortunately it didn't matter anyways. So while we are still making the playoffs, we fall all the way down to the 3rd spot. Finishing with under 90 wins after last year is certainly a disappointment, but even more concerning, just like last year, I am seeing more snowflakes than a Twitter comment thread, and I'm really hoping this cold streak does not follow us into the playoffs. We are taking on Cincinnati in the first round, where Lucas Giolito will be the ace, but I'm also very tempted to utilize Leo Ramirez, who is now up to B potential. We will see if this roster is finally good enough to win a playoff series after 4 seasons, as we're definitely better on paper this season, but still found a way to finish with a worse record than season 3. Game 1 against Cincinnati is still scoreless in the 6th inning, at least until this 2-run shot, as we take the lead and Lucas Giolito is doing his job. We are almost to the end of the game, still shutting them out, and even though it wasn't dominant, it feels good to finally get our first playoff win. We are now 1 win away from the next round, but Cincinnati strikes first, as Chase Dollander is off to a very bad start, giving up 6 runs in the 3rd inning. Obviously after that, we stood no chance, as they win 9-3, and in this winner-takes-all Game 3, I'm a bit worried about our offense, because we have only scored a few runs per game. This is not a good start, as they go deep with Ryan Jeffers, and just like last year, our bats are stalling out, but there's a nuke from Melton. That is going to keep this close, as Michael Toglia goes deep as well, and Leo Ramirez is on the mound pitching a great game. He has recovered very nicely ever since giving up that home run, and that could be the difference between winning and losing, as there is another run, so fortunately the Colorado Rockies are moving on to the next round. That was not easy, but now we're going to need all the luck we can get against the Atlanta Braves, who are the number 2 seed behind the Dodgers, and their roster is also insane. If we play how we did against Cincinnati, this team is going to walk all over us, as we're already down by a run, but here we go, O'Connell's going to score 2, and our offense explodes all over them for 7 runs. That is exactly exactly what we were waiting for, but doing a quick sim, they score 8 runs in 2 innings. I really thought we had that in the bag, so I got lazy and simmed ahead, which is gonna cost us the game. And with the way that game went, I would be very surprised if we stand a chance. Unfortunately, we are already facing elimination, and Chase Dollander is not off to a better start than last time, as he gives up the first 2 runs of the game, and we are getting shut down. Spencer Schwellenbach is not going to be an easy opponent, as he is no-hitting us, and Murphy hits another home run. Just like last season, it seems our season is ending on a sweep, as we do rally back with a run, followed by a 3-run shot, and this is not over. I was ready to call it, but it is a 1-run game, but unfortunately, we leave the bases loaded, and it's gonna come down to the 9th inning. We're fighting for the chance just to see one more game, but unfortunately, Atlanta signed Ryan Helsley, who throws gas. We're down to our final out, as Amador cannot square this up, so in a heartbreaker, Atlanta is moving on to the next round. Colorado has been eliminated for the 2nd year in a row, as the Braves win the World Series, so it seems they have reestablished themselves as a super team along with the Dodgers. On the other hand, our franchise is poverty, so we're kind of just waiting for our young guys to develop, and next year we should be seeing the debuts of Charlie Condon and Tyrone Liranzo, along with a player we actually drafted in Martin Ojeda. In the offseason, we have some difficult free agent decisions to make, as Lucas Giolito is here, and while he's 34 years old, he has been great for the Rockies. His production definitely went down from last year, and he's not asking for too much money, so I'm offering $20 million a year for 2 seasons, which I feel is pretty realistic. At the deadline, though, we made a big move for Garrett Whitlock, who I really like, but he's gonna be pretty expensive, costing about $6.5 million a year, which is definitely not in our budget. If Lucas Giolito does not resign with the team, we might want to bring in Whitlock as a starting pitcher, but for now, I'm gonna withdraw the offer and see what happens. Out of our remaining players, the only one I actually want to bring back is our catcher, who may be 33 years old, but with this type of plate discipline, there's no reason not to bring him back. The biggest move of the offseason might be getting Kyle Freeland and Chris Bryant's contracts off the books, as Bryant specifically has not played in this entire franchise. Considering we play at Coors Field, I don't think any of the top line starting pitchers are gonna want to come here, so even though I do want to bring back Lucas Giolito, I have a backup plan in case he does not resign. The St. Louis Cardinals are very much rebuilding, and they're stuck with Tanner Hoke on a 4-year contract, and they're more than willing to move on from him and start their rebuild. He put up pretty good numbers last season and would fit right into our rotation, which definitely could use another piece. Aside from Giolito, we also lost Kyle Freeland, so we have 2 spots to fill, and honestly, I keep coming back to the idea of putting Garrett Whitlock in one of them. His stamina is not super high, but he does have a 92 walks per 9, and of course, that is the most important stat in the game. The other thing we need to figure out is what to do with Brenton Doyle, who is entering the final year of his contract and is coming off of a breakout season. Giving him 1 more year of arbitration would cost about $24 million, and giving him a 5-year extension would not really cost that much more per year, so I think we're gonna try and do that. We have plenty of money to do that, but to make even more room, I'm trading Oswaldo Cabrera, which will get us a solid bullpen arm. It turns out that all 3 of the players I wanted to bring back are actually interested in returning to Colorado, which certainly works out, as I can now offer them lowball contracts and hope they accept. Immediately, Giolito signs for way under asking price, and maybe the same can go for Garrett Whitlock, who is also coming back to Colorado. All things considered, we're very lucky to be running it back with the same team as last year, as we're actually getting a full year of Andy Pipp, and Adeo Amador, Robert Calaz, and Aiden McConnell are hopefully going to keep improving. The big change this year is the rotation though, as Leo Ramirez is moving up to the number 3 spot, and Garrett Whitlock will slot in as our 5 starter. With 92 walks per 9, I'm very optimistic it's going to be a good year for him, while Flamingo Alvarez should also keep developing. Just like last year, opening day is against the team that we took on in the wild card, as we hit a 3-run nuke, so just like in the playoffs, we're looking for a huge W. Then in the 5th inning, Andy Pipp hits another RBI, and that would earn us our first win of the season. Definitely not an amazing offensive performance, as Aiden O'Connell's home run was the highlight of the day, but on the bright side, Chase Dollander did go 5 innings before a rain delay pulled him out of the game. Just like in the wild card, we are looking to beat Cincinnati, and we do it in 2 games, as Lucas Giolito took the mound, and our offense definitely helped them out. At this point in the rebuild, I'm not even covering scouting, because we already have a pretty solid core in the minors, and it's only getting better as we have 3 guys in the top 10 and 2 more in the top 15. Even even after all the promotions, we have a grand total of 15 guys in the top 100. But as far as promotions go, I know it didn't work out last year, but I think we finally need to bring up Charlie Condon, who is now 25 years old. Unfortunately, the numbers were just not there last season, but as we continue to win, there might be some room to add him to the team, especially if it helps us overtake the Dodgers. Right now, we are only half a game back, nearing the end of April, but after closing the month on a 5-game win streak, they are 2 games above us. While we've won 5 games in a row, they won 6, so it feels like no matter what we do, this team always seems to have our number in some way or another. However, we are taking them on later in the month, which will be a great test for our team, and it really feels like we're ready because we just took down the Padres 15-2. Our team hit 5 home runs in this game, and it feels like we've been on fire. We are currently second in the league in batting average, while the Dodgers are in first, and it feels like no matter how good we are, even with MVP level Mike Toglia back on the team, it's just not going to be enough to catch up to them. It seems that many regulars on the offense are off to a hot start, but scrolling down, it seems to drop off a little faster than we want. In particular, I was hoping for a bit more from Andy Pipp and Ezekiel Tovar, but on the bright side, it seems that our rotation led by Chase Dollander has been awesome so far. It seems that everybody's progressing nicely so far, except for Lucas Giolito, who is 34 years old and may not be our number 2 for much longer. Above all else though, it's very nice to see that Dollander has finally stepped up as our number 1, as at this point in his career, he's most known for choking in the playoffs. Even with our success, we are a game and a half behind the Dodgers, and even though it's the month of May, it feels like this could be a playoff series with how high the stakes are. Garrett Whitlock is on the mound for this game, but he immediately gives up 3 runs, so we are off to a very bad start. There's still plenty of time though, so I'm not panicking, although now I finally am. We are losing 6-0 through the 4th inning, and it's just very clear that the Dodgers are the better team, as they ate us for lunch 8-2, and I'm not expecting the second game to go any better. However, we're tied up in the 9th inning, and after the embarrassment in the first game, I would love to give them a walk-off, and Michael Toglia is gonna do exactly that. Right on cue, Big Mike sends that into right field, and the series is tied at 1 game apiece. What an answer for the Rockies, as we definitely didn't play our best, but still got the job done, and Game 3 is also tied. I was pretty nervous after the first one, but it seems that was just a fluke, and I feel more confident about this team knowing that we've been neck and neck with one of the best teams in the history of baseball. Along with that, we also just took a 2-run lead, so I'm feeling even better, as Neil Sams is in to close them out, but Mookie Betts ties the game, at least before we walk it off. Who was that? Looking at the scorecard, it was Michael Toglia again, securing his 2nd walk-off home run in a row, and if he's not the MVP frontrunner, I really don't know who is. Sure enough, he is in 3rd place, having another monster season, but even more surprising, going to the Cy Young, Leo Ramirez is in 2nd place. Just a reminder, he is a relief pitcher who we traded Zach Veen for 2 years ago, and checking out the numbers, I think it's fair to say that we won that trade by a mile. It's definitely not common to see 2 teams that are this good in the same division, as the battle for the West continues, and we are finally tied for 1st place. We've been waiting on that for quite a while, and now to push us over the edge, I think it's time to bring up Charlie Condon. We cannot hold off on doing this any longer, as he's putting up way too good of numbers at AAA, and I know another righty is the last thing we need in the lineup, but let's throw him in and see what happens. I'm really hoping that decision sparks our lineup to be the best in all of baseball, as we have won 5 games in a row and are facing the Dodgers again. Whoever wins this game will take possession of the West, so we're jumping into it where the Rockies start off with the lead. They strike first as Andy Pipp goes yard to make it 2-0, and Lucas Giolito is shutting them down through 4 innings. This is definitely not what I expected, as they finally score in the 7th, but we load up the bases and Brenton Doyle clears them. Our offense came through with a 14-hit performance when we needed them most, and that included dingers from Ezekiel Tovar and Andy Pipp. I couldn't ask for more against a very good team as we sweep the Guardians, and we have a 3.5 game division lead at the start of July. This is no surprise, as our offense has caught fire ever since bringing up Charlie Condon, as that was an excellent month. It really feels like this is the most well-balanced offense we've ever had, as Michael Toglia is still doing his thing, but unlike 2 years ago, it feels like he actually has a supporting cast putting up pretty good numbers around him. Some of the young guys like Andy Pipp, Robert Kalaz, and Aiden O'Connell have picked things back up, while Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle are right behind them. There's also the rotation, which I cannot say enough good about, as Chase Dollander has truly broken out as an ace this year. It is very possible that him or Leo Ramirez win the Cy Young Award, as Ramirez Ramirez was the finalist the last time we checked, but it feels like Dollander might have pulled ahead with a 10-1 record. Sure enough, he is in second place for the award, while Toglia has dropped out of the MVP race. Before we move forward, one thing I do need to point out is Charlie Condon is not giving up his spot in the lineup, as he's off to a great start, hitting .355. He might have been the missing piece that our offense was looking for, and with our success, I think I'm just gonna simulate all the way to the All-Star break. At this point, I don't know if anyone's gonna stop us, as we are 71-26, and I know it's way too early to say this, but this time I actually mean it. I think we've surpassed the Dodgers. We have so much youth in our lineup that is only getting better, and on top of that, our rotation has the second best ERA in the league. With all our success, I'm very curious who our All-Stars are gonna be, as Michael Toglia definitely made the game, but I'm expecting other players as well, like Chase Dollander. There's no doubt he deserves to be in the game, along with Neil Sams, who's once again the starter at closer. So those two guys plus Toglia give us 3 All-Stars, and I'm not seeing anybody else. Our team is very well balanced, which definitely makes the trade deadline an interesting time, as there is no position on the roster that needs immediate upgrading. However, one thing to note is this has been a breakout season for Aiden O'Connell, but with Ezequiel Tovar at shortstop, he has been playing out of position for his entire career. I think it's time we finally give O'Connell the reins to the shortstop position, as Tovar has pretty much reached his ceiling and is starting to regress. I am interested in trading Tovar for a third baseman who can help us right now, and his name is not Jordan Westberg. The Orioles are looking to make a playoff run, but they let Gunnar Henderson walk, and as a result, they are stuck with Luis Vazquez, which is not ideal. They are the team that make the most sense for Tovar, and they also have a player that I really like in Kobe Mayo. This trade really could not work out better for both sides, as O'Connell can slide over to shortstop, and Kobe Mayo can take his place at third base. They should accept this straight up as we throw in Tovar, and there we go, it is an even match, and that is the move we're making at the deadline. Aiden O'Connell is finally at shortstop for the first time in his career, and we also get a very high upside bat at third base. However, before we advance, I am checking the block one more time and cannot pass on adding another reliever in Jorge Alcala. This is a rental that will cost us pretty much nothing, but make us a lot better. And honestly, with the trade bar this far in our favor, why not go after somebody else like George Soriano? He's basically Alcala, but better, and also has 3 years of control remaining, as we once again shore up our bullpen at the trade deadline. With a 4.5 game division lead entering the month of August, I think the best thing we can do is sim the entire month and just see what happens, as we still had a good month, but the Dodgers are catching up, and it's all gonna come down to September. I'm definitely a bit nervous with the Dodgers right behind us, and after simming another week, it is still a 2.5 game gap. Fortunately though, our season the rest of the way is not that difficult, as we're taking on the White Sox and the 4th place Diamondbacks twice. All things considered, we should keep our division lead as long as we win at least a few of these last couple games, which we're gonna do, finishing with 115 wins, 1 below the record. Thanks to a strong month of March, we finished 7 games above the Dodgers, and no surprises here, we both had the best records in baseball. This was exactly the type of year we needed, especially on offense, as Michael Toglia did hit 40 home runs, but overall the offense was much more balanced, especially after adding Kobe Mayo and Charlie Condon. We have so much power in this lineup, and I'm excited to see what we can do in the playoffs, especially with Condon finishing off the year on a hot streak. Then in the rotation, don't even get me started, as Chase Dollander had a legitimate Cy Young level season, and he might have even won it. He did. That is great news for the 27-year-old who definitely took his time to get up to the show, but once he did, he was immediately an asset. Then after Dollander, even though Lucas Giolito's regressing, he still put up a pretty good year, but then our number 3 guy, Leo Ramirez, might have been even better, putting up a 2.62 ERA and a 1.06 whip. No disrespect to Giolito, but there's no doubt he's gonna be our number 2 in the playoffs, as those numbers are just ridiculous. Then finally, at 4 and 5, Flamingo Alvarez and Garrett Whitlock were on a pretty similar level this year, and while they did struggle at times, it was ultimately a good year for both players. Then in the bullpen, the decision to trade for George Soriano at the deadline was certainly a good one, as he had a very nice year alongside guys like Ross Schultz and Neil Sams. Sams was our 5th round pick in the first draft, and he played so well this season that he won Reliever of the Year. This team is so exciting with many good players, and we're taking on the New York Mets. This is our chance to redeem ourselves after losing in the NLDS last year, and we're just gonna jump right into it. I feel like we're the better team on paper, so it's time for for Chase Dollander to show them why he won the Cy Young, as he nearly gives up a run, but thankfully Andy Pipp puts us on the board first. However, in the second inning, they go deep for a 2-run bomb, so Dollander's history of choking in the playoffs seems to be continuing. That is not the performance I expected, but fortunately we're rallying back, as runners are at the corners, and here's a walk. That will load the bases for Robert Colaz, who just needs to hit this deep enough for a sac fly, which he does. That means the game is tied, as the bases are loaded once again, but we ground out, so we leave 3 runners on the board, and now we're just hoping that our bullpen can hold on. Thankfully they do for 1 more inning, but we leave 2 more runners on base, so there's a great chance this one's going to extras. Adael Amador is our last chance, but he flies out, so as I feared, this one would not be settled in regulation. However, in the 11th inning, the winning run is on first base. That is smoked into center field, but caught. But here is arguably our best hitter, Andy Pipp, who grounds it straight to second. That is going to give the Mets the opportunity to take the lead, but Sam shuts them down, so this is still going in the 12th, but not for long. Robert Colaz, in one swing, ends the game with a walk-off home run, and despite a rough start from Dollander to say the least, we are 1-0. That was barely a victory, but I hope it wakes up our offense as we win the second game 5-1. I'm going to simulate one more game just to see if we can sweep the series, as Lucas Giolito is on the mound and we lose. It would have been nice to get that game over with, as Flamingo Alvarez gives up a 2-run home run, so it seems this victory will not be as easy as I previously thought. We are still being shut out in the 4th inning, as they're going to add 2 more runs, and after last year, I'm terrified of going to game 5, but there is a 5-run inning with a grand slam. That was the trade deadline edition Kobe Mayo tying the game, and that is such a relief because I feel like our bullpen is definitely better than theirs. We are going to hold them down, but cannot score another run despite getting several guys on base, and the last thing I want to do is go back to extra innings, and it seems that might be what happens. I am once again begging for our bullpen to hold them, but that is a walk-off home run. That may be the only thing worse for extra innings, as they have won 2 games in a row, and despite winning 115 games, our season is on the line. Despite his rough start, I am putting this game in the hands of Chase Dollander, who nearly gave up the first run of the day, so I really hope I do not regret our decision, as our offense is getting shut down. It is still scoreless going into the 5th inning, as they finally hit a home run, so our season may only last a few more innings, as Lindor cannot handle this diving play, and that allows a runner to score from third. I don't know what's been going on with our offense the past couple days, but they definitely need to figure it out, as here's a double, and Kobe Mayo, thank you. We have taken a 1-run lead, and now we just need to hold it, as our bullpen takes care of business in the 8th inning, and Robert Colaz ices the game. That was way too close for comfort, but apparently it is not over yet. Are you serious? With the way I was talking, I thought we were moving on to the next round, but our reliever of the year, Neil Sams, had the biggest meltdown of his life. That means we are going back to extra innings for the 3rd time of the series. I gotta be honest, I'm not enjoying myself, but this could go down as the best playoff series ever. But of course, we want to secure the walk-off victory, and that is smoke down the line. Can we score from first base? Not gonna happen. That means the winning run is on 3rd base with 2 away, and we strike out. It feels like this game can truly never end, as Ross Schultz is in the game and goes 1-2-3. So now I'm begging the offense to do at least something, as Doyle singles, and there's 2 aboard. Once again, the winning run is in scoring position, as this chopper goes to Lindor. That is gonna be a tough play that he cannot make in time. The bases are loaded for Michael Toglia, but I'm late on the fastball, and that was a huge missed opportunity again. I'm just gonna be honest and say that we probably don't deserve to win this game, but the Mets offense has completely stalled out in the 13th inning, although the end might be nearing. Soriano needs to get out of this, and that strikeout is a good start, followed by another. Definitely got the heart rate up, but in the end, it did not make a difference, although we're gonna need him to do it one more time, and he is able to do that. This game is now in the 14th inning, and finally the Rockies end it. I really thought I was gonna lose my life. I never want to see the New York Mets on this channel ever again, but now we're taking on the team that knocked us out of the playoffs last year. No surprise, Atlanta is still really good, but they added Yordan Alvarez, making them even more deadly, and I completely forgot that they also have Garrett Crochet. They had to beat the Dodgers to get here, so we know they're good, but there's a 3-run bomb to start off. That is going to make Flamingo Alvarez's job a lot easier, but from last year's series, we know these guys can score a lot of of runs. We definitely have to be careful, but so far Alvarez has a perfect game, and that will continue through the 5th inning as Amador goes deep. Unfortunately, no perfect game for Alvarez, but he does secure a huge win as we go up 1-0 in the series. That is a big deal, and now in Game 2, Leo Ramirez is on the mound and gets his 2nd win of the postseason. I'm still not feeling great about winning this series, but another win would probably change that as Giolito gets the W, and honestly, my plan was to simulate until we lost, but with the chance to get a sweep on the line, I feel like we have to watch this play out. Unfortunately though, Atlanta's not going to make it too easy as they score 2 runs in the 3rd, but Coby Mayo strikes right back with an RBI double. We are keeping this game competitive as that is smoked into right field, but caught, so we are still trailing by 1 run looking for something, and there it is. I would be amazed if Robert Calaz is not the playoff MVP, as it feels like all of our big moments have been from him. After losing to the Braves last season, we sweep them in 4 games to move on to the World Series, and it really goes to show just how much growth Colorado has endured in the past 12 months. This is not the same team that lost badly in the NLDS, and we're gonna have a chance to prove that against either the Yankees or the Royals. Simming ahead, who will be our opponent? It's New York. As far as final bosses go, they're pretty good as they still have Aaron Judge and added George Kirby last offseason, but ultimately they are not as good as the Dodgers or even the Braves. We have an early chance to prove that we are the better team, and with our number 5 starter Garrett Whitlock on the mound, we could really use a win. So far, this game is scoreless, but we give up 2 runs, and their rotation might be just a little bit better than I thought. We have not scored a single run off of them until the 8th inning, and with their starter out of the game, we have a chance to tie it up. A single from Doyle puts runners at the corners, but that is a double play, or at least it should have been. A run's gonna score off that. We just got extremely lucky, but unfortunately the Yankees come right back, so unfortunately New York takes game number 1, which I was not expecting. Definitely not what I was hoping for, and now we're facing George Kirby, but start out with a bang. Now we just need Chase Dollander to get over himself and have a good game, and so far he's doing a great job. We could really use another run against Kirby, and just like that, they tied the game. So just like last game, we have a close one. However, now the bases are loaded for Big Mike, and I should not have swung at that. It's gonna be a double play that Tolia is able to beat out. Once again, I get bailed out for being bad at the show, and on the next pitch, they lay a sweeper right over the middle as Charlie Condon ices it. All I can say is thank goodness as the series is tied, as that was exactly what our offense needed, and we are up 2-1. It seems our offense has finally discovered itself as we score 6 runs in 2 games in a row, so we have a chance to go up 3-1, although New York is not making that easy. It is 3-1 in the 4th inning, but Brenton Doyle just drove in another run as we have rallied back to score 7 runs in 1 inning. This might be over. That was a huge inning as Coby Mayo goes deep in the 7th inning, so after a concerning start, the Colorado Rockies have once again caught fire. We took them over 5 years ago, and they are now so close to winning the World Series, but with George Kirby back on the bump, this will not be an easy win. However, I might have spoken too soon as Andy Pipp goes deep, followed by an Aaron Judge home run, and after a fast start, no runs have been scored ever since the 1st inning. The first team to score may win this game as Santos goes deep for the Yankees, so we might be running out of time, but there's 2 guys on base. Down 2 runs, we are jumping into this game trying to steal a win from New York, and Doyle immediately smacks in 1 run before Amador scores the tying run. Robert Calaz might be the playoff and World Series MVP, and once again, he loads the bases for Coby Mayo, but that's a deep fly out. For a split second, I thought he was clearing the bases, but now New York has a chance to cook as Aaron Judge is at the plate, but he grounds out. So once again, this might go to extra innings, but we score a run in the 9th. That means Neil Sams can close out a World Series win as he has recorded 2 outs and is 1 more away from a World Series victory. Austin Wells pops up down the 3rd baseline, and just like that, the Colorado Rockies win the World Series. Thank you for watching this mega long video. If you did enjoy, leave a like and subscribe, and as always, click right here to see more of my content.